Call the meeting to order of the Wilmington City Council. I'd like to welcome all those who are with us here this evening and all those who are watching us at home. Thank you for taking an interest in your government. At this time, I'd like to introduce Pastor James Jameson, chaplain of the Wilmington Police Department, for the invocation, and ask if everyone would remain standing afterwards. And I would like to ask Troop 220 and 1220 to come forward after the invocation to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Let us look to the Lord. Gracious Father in heaven, we do thank you, God, for these men and women, God, who have taken out time in their lives, God, to make this city a better place. We pray that you give them wisdom and knowledge above their years. We thank you for those who came out tonight to take an interest in their city. We ask, Lord, that you bless our first responders, God, all over. Continue to keep them safe from all hurt, harm, and danger. Now, God, the business that's go forth tonight, God, let them come together and reason together and do what's best for the nation, Lord. Bless now, God, everything that's done here and everything that's said. In the name of our holy, magnificent, immaculate Father, amen.
Amen. Troop, if you'll please come forward. Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We have one presentation this evening is a proclamation naming September 30th, 2022 as the Junior League of Wilmington Day. And at this time, I'd like to recognize Ms. Madeline Shieldwalter, President of the Junior League of Wilmington. If she'll meet me at the front, and we'll read the proclamation. City of Wilmington, North Carolina proclamation reads, whereas the foundation of humane and just society is the people's willingness to work together for the common good, and whereas experience teaches us that government by itself cannot solve all of our nation's social ills, and that we must rely on one of our country's greatest treasures, the volunteers. And whereas the Junior League of Wilmington has served this community for 70 years, and whereas the Junior League of Wilmington benefits the quality of life in our community through their training of members in the areas of leadership and volunteer service. And where it is the duty of all citizens to honor our dedicated volunteers and celebrate the volunteer program which contributes to the life of our communities. Now, therefore, I, Bill Saffo, Mayor of the City of Wilmington, with the Wilmington City Council, do hereby proclaim September 30th, 2022 to be the Junior League of Wilmington Day in the City of Wilmington, and urge all of its citizens to recognize the endeavors of this worthy organization. Madeline, I'd just like to say to you and your organization, you do phenomenal work year in and year out, day in and day out, and the amount of volunteers that you have has been outstanding, and I just want to say congratulations and thank you. And I know you have a few words to say.
Thank you. I prepared words, which is not usually what I do. I would like to briefly thank the City of Wilmington, you, Mayor Saffo, Mayor Pro Tem, and the City Council for taking up some of your time of your meeting, because time is our most precious resource. And speaking of time, our organization is one that uses time in order to make an impact. Our time is spent embedding our mission throughout our community, and it's spent identifying and supporting community issues, and it's spent developing the leaders to respond to the needs of our community in order to create tangible, impactful social change from the ground up. Over time, since our inception 70 years ago next Friday, our volunteers have poured countless hours, last count was over 11,000, of our time and talent into this city to make it a place where everyone within it feels like a valuable member. In the interest of time, I will not read the long list of ways we have shown our love for this city, but I will say that our city is our leadership laboratory. Members are charged with identifying the issues, starting new or supporting existing projects in their infancy, and helping develop them as programs or independent organizations, watching them set sail with their own leaders at the helm. But our members are provided with a vast network of connections, a wide array of leadership experiences and skills, plus the passion and confidence to make a difference. They go on to continue serving Wilmington as leaders of other organizations and institutions that touch every corner of our community. Two notable organizations born from the time and talent of Junior League women are also celebrating big birthdays this year: the Children's Museum of Wilmington and Dreams. League members identified the needs of our city's most vulnerable and youngest citizens and responded swiftly. Our work will never be done, and our time will never be enough, but the public support from the leaders like those in this room will help us continue our mission and spend the next 7 decades adapting to the needs of our community to continue to leave it a little bit better than we found it. So thank you for your time and for using your positions to raise awareness of our mission. It saves us a little time. And I'm leaving here to go to our first meeting of the year and to share this with our membership. So I appreciate the bump on the agenda. And thank you so much.
Yeah, we just had to grab one picture because we both graduated from the Citadel, so we needed one picture with the rings out. That's all right.
She was a Citadel. Yeah. Next item of business is our consent agenda, items 1 through 7. Are there any items any council member would like to hear separately? If not, what are the wishes of this council?
I want to pull C4.
C4? Okay. Anything else? Okay, we have a motion to approve the agenda item C1 through C7, excluding C4. We have a motion to approve by Councilmember Barnett, second by Councilmember Rivenbark. Discussion. All in favor of that motion, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. That item passes unanimously. Mr. Spears.
Tony,
Yes, sir.
we're talking about security in city facilities, and I'm just asking, are we going to have the same level of security throughout city facilities? I mean, I see this was the opportune time for me to ask about this. As it relates to, you know, we had an incident where now you have to call to get in, and we have the camera on, is it your office and the mayor's office, but
Now, I just needed a little definition. Thank you. Yes, sir. We are working on a plan right now it's basically 3-phased, and if you want to get into it, we certainly can ask Mr. Moten, who's the project manager on the project, to come forward and talk to you a little bit more about it. But it's basically it's short-term, medium-term, and long-term solutions. The short-term solutions are going to be hiring security guards for both 305 and this building. And then there'll be a third person who will be a roaming person between these two buildings, 115 North Front and 414 Chestnut. So there'll be 3 individuals that'll be charged with on-site security and controlling entrance into and out of the buildings, as opposed to hopefully having to have the doors locked. There will be other additional upgrades that will include improving lighting around the buildings. You'll note that we've already made some changes around 305 where we've taken away some of the underbrush in that area, trying to create the better sight lines. And then we will also be looking long-term at cameras and other methods of security that will be probably just longer in coming.
But that'll be incorporated in
Yes,
this?
sir.
Okay, all right, thank you.
You're welcome.
I make a motion to approve.
Okay, we have a motion by Councilmember Spears, second by Councilmember Anderson. Discussion. All in favor of that motion, please indicate by saying aye. Any opposed? The item passes unanimously. That brings us to our next item of business, which is our public information. We have one speaker that has signed up to speak with us this evening. Will be allocated 5 minutes. Ms. Erica O'Brien, whose request for a resolution protecting reproductive rights in the city of Wilmington. Ms. O'Brien?
Good evening. My name is Erica O'Brien, and I'm a resident of Wilmington, North Carolina, and I'm here today to request that our city council members put forward and pass a resolution to protect the safety and privacy of people accessing abortion in this city. In the months since Dobbs versus Jackson's Women's Health Organization, in so many cities across the country, pregnant people are already being forced into dangerous, unconscionable, and impossible situations. Their autonomy is being denied, and their lives are at risk. It is terrifying to witness and unacceptable to do nothing. I ask that you introduce a resolution to protect access to reproductive health care, including contraception and abortion, in the city of Wilmington. The people of this community deserve no less than their full dignity and the unwavering support of their city council. Other cities are standing up for their citizens and neighbors, with measures including deprioritization and funding limits. The city councils of Austin, Atlanta, New Orleans, St. Louis, and still many more have all passed resolutions and ordinances in an effort to protect safe abortion access for their citizens. We need to join them. I've been a resident of Wilmington for 5 years, about the longest I've lived anywhere in my life. I love this city, the home I chose. Over the past 5 years, I've walked the Riverwalk countless sunsets, eaten an inadvisable amount of boomboulatis, played right field with the Port City Pickles in Strange Park on summer Sundays. And in those moments, I'd give myself a little daydream of bringing my children to these places someday. I've always wanted to be a mother. It's been the through line of a winding path, something I feel in my bones I was meant to do. And now the thought of it is paralyzing. The fear of having a planned pregnancy, of something going wrong, of being taken to a hospital that cannot legally treat me, of being a prisoner in my own body, a body I cannot advocate for and my loved ones cannot defend. That fear is overwhelming. All of the women that I know here are angry and afraid in their own ways, and this is mine. I've always wanted to be a mother, but I don't want to die trying. I'm here today because Wilmington is my chosen home. Poet Warsan Shire writes, "No one leaves home unless home is the mouth of a shark." They aren't here yet, but we can see the fins in the shallows. As the precarious layers of protection peel away, the city of Wilmington must show up for its people. Every resident of this city should have the safety and freedom to build their families and advocate for their own health. These are rights currently protected in our state, but we all know, we can all feel how quickly those state protections can go away. We can't wait and hope for the tide to turn, or leave our community anxiously watching for the shadow of the shark. Thank you for listening. Again, I urge you to act on behalf of our community to create and pass a resolution to protect our right to safe, accessible abortion. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. The next item of business is our public hearings. Item PH1 is an ordinance directing the housing inspector to vacate, close, and repair or demolish the dwelling at 214 North 11th Street as unfit for human habitation pursuant to Article 5, Chapter 16 of the City Code, and directing that a notice be placed thereon prohibiting its use or occupancy. At this time, I'd like to recognize our city manager, Ms. Tony Calder. Mr. Calder.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, members of council, Mayor Pro Tem. Brian Renner, our Chief Code Enforcement Officer, will overview this item for us this evening.
Good evening, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, Council. I'm Brian Renner. I'm the Chief Code Enforcement Officer with Community Services. So the property we're looking at tonight is 214 North 11th Street. You might remember on August 2nd, we talked about 212 North 11th Street. That's the duplex just south of this unit. Tonight, we're going to be talking about the other duplex. And these are two separate public hearings because they're addressed separately, and that's the way we chose to bring them forward. With 212 North 11th Street, this is a single story. By tax record, it's a duplex. The owner is Owner ROI Trust, Devin J. Bala, is the trustee, and this property is managed by 9 Lives LLC, including Jeremy Bailey and Megan Jackson, who we spoke about back on August 2nd. So this is the frontage of that unit. So this is the single entry point to this side of the duplex. There's another entry on the right side in between those two buildings that we'll talk about in the next public hearing. I just want you to be aware of the context of the structure of this building that we're talking about. So the initial inspection on this property occurred on December 6th of 2021. That was from a complaint from the Department of Social Services, what brought us out here to this unit. We took this to Housing Code hearing on January 27th of 2022, and the order to repair or demolish this building expired on June 7th of 2022. That findings of fact found that the tax value of that structure, the 2021 tax value, was $76,273. That's for the whole duplex, including both units. The estimated cost to repair at that time was $42,110, and that puts us at 55%, which make this dilapidated according to the city's minimum housing code. These are the sections of the minimum housing code that are outlined in that findings of fact, which are attached in this item. These are some photos of what we're talking about on this building. I will start off with that this building has since been vacated. Within the last few weeks, it was vacated. However, a lot of the plumbing and electrical between the two sides of the duplex are shared. So you might see some repeat photos when we're talking about the outside. So underneath, you can see that foundation wall being collapsed in, and that's actually a plumbing line. When I was partway under the building, there was actually somebody in one of the other units that is occupied flushed the toilet, and there was wastewater shooting out from that pipe junction. There's a photo of that. You can't really see it because it's in motion, but it's leaking out from underneath there. There's a very strong smell of sewage that has been underneath this building since we started this case, if not well before. This is the outside of the building. What you saw in that first photo, that exposed Tyvek, what the property manager was in the process of doing was replacing some of this termite damaged wood and also covering up some of it with the Tyvek. There was some paint going on to the windowsills that was over rotten wood and things like that during the time of this inspection, which was on August 22nd, or sorry, 26th.
Brian, did you say there was paint going over rotten wood?
Correct, and we'll see some of that in some of the photos.
I just wanted to make sure I heard you right. Thank you.
Yes, correct. Which is, part of the reason why we want to make sure repairs are done properly when we talk about these things. And here you can see, again, that termite damaged wood. This is the inside of the unit. A lot of the ceilings in this building have splitting seams, and you can actually see the wave in that ceiling. This is in the kitchen area, and there had been some water intrusion. We still think there might be some, but not to the extent as it was before. This is in the kitchen. We see how the plaster walls are crumbling out, the exposed electrical, and there's actually rodent feces within this kitchen, even though as I said, it's been vacated. This is that wall in the kitchen, which goes to show the extent of the rot and decay within the structure of this building. This is the kitchen. The reason I included this photo is because I want to look at the angles of how that cabinet lines up with that stove. This floor is almost sinking in over here behind the stove, and there's actually a common point of rat entry on that back side that the tenants used to complain about pretty heavily when this was occupied. So this is an example of the types of repairs that are going on or were going on inside of this unit. In this room that we see here, the tenant that was in this room actually passed away back in June of this year. But the ceiling in this room was heavily cracked and was on the borderline of collapse. However, they've built a makeshift frame and covered it with this 1/8 plywood, which is unacceptable, and you'll see this electrical wire hanging down. So as we look at these units, a lot of these ceilings have been covered with this makeshift repair, which we've made clear to the property manager is inadequate. This is underneath the bathroom sink. We can see that point of rodent entry, and that's the bathroom door handle completely off. Just showing the maintenance on the baseboard heaters in there has been none, and that's actually the secondary egress door that's within a bedroom. You can see it's been sealed off. And that's just showing the window frames. So with this property, we have about $12,000 in past due taxes, as we talked about back on August 2nd. What we're looking at in this ordinance is we had 45 days to vacate to allow the tenant that was in there time to relocate. However, that tenant has relocated. And we're looking at 131 days to repair or demolish this. The reason it's 131 days is because that aligns with the August 2nd ordinance on the building that's on the same parcel. So in the event that we need to demolish this, it would all happen at the same time, which would look about February of 2023. And I'm here for any questions about this side of the duplex.
Do you have any questions for staff, for Brian?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir. Mr. Spears?
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
After Councilmember Spears.
Councilmember Spears?
Go ahead, John. You might say something better than what I'm gonna say.
Just a point of clarification I need to ask Mr. Renner. Mr. Renner, the 131 days that you're recommending, is that a reasonable amount of time for someone to make the sufficient repairs if they were of a mind to do so?
The 131 days is of a reasonable amount of time, especially taking into consideration that the order to repair this dwelling was issued back in February 2nd of 2022. So yes, I would consider that a reasonable amount of time.
Thank you. I just wanted to make that clear, that it wasn't an artificial date that was just picked. It just happened that it could align and still leave a reasonable time.
Okay. Spears?
Brian, did you say somebody passed away in this unit too?
Correct. In the room where you saw the false ceiling installed, it was in that room. I don't know the cause of death for that tenant, but it was while we had our active case, while we were working on the
But this is not the same home that when you were here the last time you said somebody passed away in the other unit, right?
Correct. You're looking at the blue two-story building, which you can see in this photo. There were two people that passed away from that second floor, yes.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. Any other questions? Thank you, Brian. This time I'd like to recognize the property owner. Is the property owner here? Property owner is not here. Ask if anyone, I'm going to open up the public hearing, ask if anyone in public wishes to speak on this particular item. Seeing none, I ask any, Madam Clerk, have you received any comments?
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor, I did. We received one comment from Tracy Sloop of 207 North 11th Street. I own and reside at 207 North 11th Street and would like to submit comments in support of the proposed ordinances for PH1 and PH2 for the dwellings across the street from me. These dwellings are on property connected to the garage apartment at 212 North 11th Street that was ordered closed by City Council on August the 4th. The owner has a long history of failing to maintain properties to minimum housing code while continuing to rent them even after being cited for minimum housing code violations with orders to vacate. Not only is this dwelling unfit for habitation, it poses a public health hazard and is a public nuisance. It has become a haven for the homeless and drug dealers that litter around the property all hours of the day and night. There is a high turnover in the residents, resulting in piles of trash on the property as they come and go. There have been several deaths as well as criminal activity associated with the dwelling. Drive-by drug dealing is commonplace, as is violent crime, drug overdose shootings, and even a murder in April of this year. This property not only possesses a danger for the horrific living condition, it possesses a danger to the surrounding community and property owners from the drug activity and violent crime associated with it. I should be able to live in my home and walk in my neighborhood without having to fear for myself and my neighbors' health and safety. I implore City Council to approve ordinances PH1 and PH2. Thank you for consideration.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. I'm going to close the public hearing and ask for the wishes of council.
Just a couple comments there, I
Okay,
think.
Mr. Anderson and then Mr. Ravenbart.
Brian, just, I guess it's concerning that the property owner or representative is not here. Have you had a correspondence with them, or is this is starting to get the feel of one of those, like, not necessarily housing, but where we have someone that's just gonna try to obfuscate it all? I mean, does this just look like one to you it's going to get torn down? I mean, do you have any evidence to the contrary?
Well, I have been in conversation with Mr. Bailey since walking out of this building on August 2nd, on and off. We had email correspondence this week, actually. My understanding is that his plan is to focus his attention on 813 Castle Street, the Colonial Arms, and then he is unsure about what to do with these units on this property at this time. I did speak to a contractor who came into my office to talk to me about the needed repairs on all of these buildings, and we were all pretty much on the understanding that these two buildings probably need to be demolished because of the extent of rot and decay on the framing.
Mr. Rivenbark?
So given that we still are going to go through this motion of 131 days,
So the 131 days aligns with the time that we provided for 212 North 11th Street. I would say that it is council discretion to alter that timeline however they see fit.
okay. In the meantime, the house still sits there, and the witness, the lady that just sent the note that Penny just read, we still have, I mean, the problem is still there, and it's going to be there until this body or the gentleman in your office does something productive, or we vote to tear it down. And it's still inflicting itself on the neighborhood. Is there anything we can do to require them to secure the house?
That is part of this ordinance, is to vacate and close. The house, I will say, is, for lack of better terms, locked up. We did board up 212 North 11th Street yesterday to ensure that all the openings that were accessible were closed, as we did with 813 Castle. At the expiration of that 45 days, we would do the same on this one. However, that is council discretion, and that can be modified.
Thank you very much, Brian.
You're welcome.
All right, we have a motion on the floor by Councilmember Spears, second by Councilmember Anderson. Discussion. All in favor of that motion, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Item passes unanimously on first reading. Is there a motion to waive second reading? Motion made by Councilmember Waddell, second by Councilmember Anderson. Discussion. All in favor of that motion, please indicate by saying aye. Any opposed? Item passes unanimously on first as well as second reading. That brings us to the next item of business, which is item PH2, which is an ordinance directing the housing inspector to vacate, close, and repair or demolish a dwelling at 1102 Grace Street as unfit for human habitation pursuant to Article 5, Chapter 16 of the City Code, and directing that a notice be placed thereon prohibiting its use or occupancy. Again, I'd like to recognize our city manager, Mr. Caudle. Mr. Caudle.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Renner will overview this item as well.
So as I had mentioned in the last public hearing, this is the other side of the duplex. So on tax record, this is a single unit. Address is 1102 Gray Street. In actuality, it is two units, Unit A and Unit B. 1102 Gray Street has an entrance on the north side there on Gray Street, and then there is a studio unit that was carved out of this building that is on the south side. So we'll see photos from both of those as we go through this. Both units are occupied. The tenants in the Grace Street side have been there pretty much the extent of our case. There's two tenants in there to our knowledge. And then the tenant on the Unit B on the south side, that's the studio, is new and it moved in there within the last month. The property owners for this property are owner RI Trust, and this is managed by 9 Lives LLC, Jeremy Bailey and Megan Jackson. So here we see the front of Unit A. You'll see this new coat of paint on the front of the building, and then Unit B on the back side, that's the entrance that we discussed. So the initial inspection on this side of the building took place June 8th of 2021. That was from a complaint from a neighbor that got us into that unit. The administrative housing code hearing took place on January 27th, and the order to repair this building expired June 7th of 2022. The tax value being $76,273 for this building. Our estimated cost of rehab for these two units is $76,273. A lot of that being from the rot that we'll see here in a little bit, and then 74%, which makes this building dilapidated by the city's minimum housing code. Sections of the minimum housing code were outlined in the findings of fact, and I'm jumping, there we go. So we'll start on this back side, the south side of the studio unit. This is an example of the condition of the siding. A lot of that siding is very rotted. It's that wood shake. Going into the unit, this is what that carved out unit looks like. There was a significant amount of moisture on the walls when I went into here. The occupant had been running that AC unit at full blast and had everything pretty sealed up. You could see the way that the humidity in that building's affected the walls. The walls were very soft, and there was actually moisture accumulating on the electrical panel while I was in that building. This electrical panel actually serves both sides, so it serves Unit A and Unit B, which farther shows how this building was split up. And I would say I found no records of permits indicating that that was ever legal. So farther on in the inspection of this unit, we see that sink, the handle just fell right off. There's rodent droppings underneath the sink, and we can see that black substance as well. So the floor of this kitchen area going into the bathroom was very much angled at a very steep angle towards the bathroom. This is a photo from underneath the house through the crawl space where we can see those joists and the subfloor being significantly rotted. A lot of this is termite damage. We saw active termites while we were inspecting this building. Here's another photo of the condition of that floor and the joists. And this is some electrical wires hanging down underneath the crawl space while I was doing my inspection. So this is going into the Grace Street side of the unit, the main unit. With the hallway, this is another example of that ceiling with the improper patching that's been going on in this unit to conceal the damage to the actual ceiling. Here's some more of that. This is actually in the kitchen. We can see that smoke alarm is busted. As I said, this unit is occupied by 2 people, and then the studio is occupied by 1 person. So this is the kitchen. There was a pretty active German cockroach infestation in here. That's just an example of that. There's actually holes to the exterior from the way that these walls were patchworked in and installed. You can see that going to the outside of the house, and then the electrical junction box hanging pretty loosely from that wall above the sink. This is underneath the sink, just showing you can see rodent droppings in that photo. There's actually a cockroach on the wall there, and then the black substance and the rot on that. So this is in the shower, the bathroom. As I said, there's 2 units, 2 people living in this unit. We can see that patchwork ceiling again with electrical wire hanging down into the shower area. And this is kind of this position between one of the bedrooms and the bathroom. And that is an electrical wire that was installed in 2021. I believe that is run towards the bathroom and the exposed junction box. And that's an example of the rot that's going on the inside of the windowsills. So with this one, we are looking in the same time frame. Because it is occupied, we're recommending 45 days to allow these 3 tenants to relocate. And then we're looking at 131 days for the repair or demolition of this, which again aligns with demolition of 212 North 11th Street if we choose to do that.
Mr. Rodenberg?
The fact that this work was done, and there's no way a permit was ever issued for that work. So is that not something that's falls into the category of criminal activity? When you do stuff like this without it being permitted, and then on top of that, you do it in this fashion, is there anything more above and beyond what your office does to these folks?
So the date of that building being divided is uncertain. I don't know when that was subdivided, but I have referred this to the city zoning office and to the county's building safety department. However, with our preceding case, it seems like we have the most authority to address this.
Okay. Well, that kind of answered my question, but what I was getting at, when somebody does this stuff, this is so illegal. Is there not any, maybe that's a John Joy question.
Generally, the state has given us the authority to use civil citations with permits. We don't generally have the ability to use the criminal system in these circumstances. There are a few criminal statutes out there, but none of them really come into play with this particular issue. We have seen some in the past. We have seen even in the past intimidation of witnesses, and that certainly has a criminal hook to it, if you will, but this is generally a civil matter.
I guess what I was driving at, I know that you hear it from time to time on the evening news about a building that was poorly constructed or the landlord didn't keep it up, and then there's a fire sweeps through, and unfortunately, people die. And then everybody's throwing, the criminality comes out then. And so that was my point. If somebody, one of these tenants, were to be, if a fire, that electrical cord hanging down in the shower, that's just, you can't make that up. Somebody were to die, there's got to be some criminal negligence there somewhere.
Councilmember, you actually did a very good job of laying the basis of what is involuntary manslaughter, and that is a felony if you violate a safety law. And the classic example that we were taught in law school is chaining of fire doors so that people can't sneak in, and then a fire occurs and people die. That is involuntary manslaughter. That's the classic example. And these are safety regulations. It's something where we demo these houses in order to prevent those tragedies from occurring.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Brian.
Mr. Barnett?
Yeah, Brian, at the end of the 45 days, is that when you boarded up?
Correct. So, at the end of that 45 days is when we would have the authority to board that up. If council wishes for us to do that sooner, they may. However, we would need to file summary ejectment to remove the tenants from that unit.
Okay, all right.
Mr. Spears? Councilmember Spears?
So you said 2 tenants live in this dwelling. Did you speak with them?
We have spoken with those tenants previously. On our most recent inspections, they were not overly talkative with us.
Oh.
So I can say yes, kind of.
Were they in good spirits about living in this place?
I would say that most tenants in these situations are happy to have a place to be.
Did they look healthy?
I do know that one of the tenants is in a benefits management program, and I have spoken with the benefits management program about relocating that tenant.
Yeah, I just think that there has to be some criminal element to this. Like, they're serial slumlords, and just the fact that they're not here because we beat up on them pretty bad the last time, they know it. I think we're responsible for this. We're responsible, we're not directly responsible for the conditions, but we're responsible for doing something about people who are taking advantage of other people in this manner. So I think if there is some other element that we can do, John, something that we can look at doing, we should probably do it.
Absolutely, council member, and I will remind council that we have discussed in closed session some of the criminal intelligence information, some of the other things that the police department works very hard to do year in and year out, and we will certainly take a look at that for this.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you, sir. This time, I will open up, ask to recognize the property owner. See, he's not here. I will now open up the public hearing, ask if anyone in the public wishes to speak on this particular item. Madam Clerk, have you received any additional comments on this one? Okay. Are there any further questions from council? I'm going to close the public hearing. We have a motion on the floor by Councilmember Spears, second by Councilmember Rivenbark. Discussion. All in favor of that motion, please indicate by saying aye. Any opposed? Item passes unanimously on first reading. Is there a motion to waive second reading? Motion made by Councilmember Spears, second by Councilmember Anderson. Discussion. All in favor of that motion, please indicate by saying aye. Any opposed? Item passes unanimously on first as well as second reading. That brings us to our next item of business, which is item PH3, which is an ordinance designating the Dr. Hubert Eaton House at 1406 Orange Street and 213 South 14th Street as a local historic landmark. At this time, I'd like to recognize our city manager, Mr. Tony Caudill. Mr. Caudill.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Historic Preservation Planner Jessica Baldwin will overview this item for us.
Good evening. Today, or this evening, I guess, I present an application for the designation of the local landmark at 1406 Orange Street and 213 South 14th Street. 1406 Orange Street and 213 South 14th Street were submitted as a designation as a local landmark by the Commission on African American History and the owners Linwood and Joanne Simpson. 1406 Orange Street and 213 South 14th Street are adjoining lots located on the south side of Orange Street and the east side of South 14th Street. The property is located within the Westbrook-Ardmore National Register Historic District. The Westbrook-Ardmore National Register Historic District report notes that the area that makes up the district was purchased in 1922 by the Home Realty Company. The development of roads and sidewalks, the divisions of lots, and the construction of new dwellings began almost immediately. While a large part of the area was completely developed by the mid-1920s, construction continued well into the 20th century. A 1926 article in the Wilmington Morning Star stated that Ardmore was the last subdivision which would be placed on the market within the present city limits. The Great Depression brought construction to a halt, but the area saw a resurgence post-World War II, leading to further growth. Here in this slide, you'll see ads for the development plan for areas in and around Westbrook-Ardmore district boundary. Also included is an ad for the Crescent Heights, which was a development abutting Westbrook, specifically designed for the Black community of Wilmington. 1406 Orange Street and 213 South 14th Street are referred to as the DeCover House in the district report. The house was built in 1929 and is the pink dot located on this map shown within the gray historic district. The DeCover family never owned the home, but rented the house until sometime before the 1940 census. In 1945, Dr. Hubert Eden Sr. and his wife Celeste purchased the home in the rear adjoining lot. They continued to live in the home until Dr. Eden Sr.'s death in 1991. The current owner, Linwood Simpson, and his wife Joanne purchased the house in 2018. As described by the National Register report, the house has a one-story gabled dwelling with a steeply pitched roof and an engaged porch. The porch is supported by paired posts on brick piers, and the front facade windows are a tripartite grouping, and the front entry features a four-panel door with a transom. A brick chimney accents the west wall, and a hipped roof bay accents the eastern facade. There are two side gables additions that were constructed along the east and west facades by the Eatons in 1948, most likely around the same time the tennis court was constructed. The tennis court is located to the southeast of the house and is a standard regulation size court. The court is fenced in with chain link and features a privacy hedge along the north and east sides. Here in the sketch, you can see the relation of the house to the court and the two wings added along the east and west facades. Also pictured here is a column from the real estate section of the Wilmington Morning Star noting Dr. Eden's plans for a new garage that is no longer extant. Dr. Hubert Eden Sr. was born in Fayetteville, North Carolina, and grew up in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. He graduated from Johnson C. Smith University and went on to attend the University of Michigan, where he earned his MD in 1942. Dr. Eden Sr. was an avid tennis player and the first African American to win the North Carolina Interscholastic Tennis Championship in 1932. He continued to play for much of his life. In 1946, Dr. Eden observed Althea Gibson during American Tennis Association tournament. There he learned of her potential as well as her lack of education, as Gibson had dropped out of school at the age of 13. Dr. Eden arranged for Althea to move to Wilmington and live with he and his family at 1406 Orange Street. Gibson attended Williston School and began training at Dr. Eden's home court. She trained, practiced, and studied with Dr. Eden and Dr. Robert Johnson on the regulation tennis court at 213 South 14th Street while living at 1406 Orange Street. Gibson went on after graduating Williston in 1949 to attend Florida A&M University on a tennis scholarship. She became the first African-American woman to win a Grand Slam, including the French Open, the U.S. Open, and Wimbledon. Gibson would eventually be inducted into the Court of Champions. Dr. Eden Sr. was critical in the fight to integrate professional sports through his teaching and training of Althea Gibson. He was also influential on a local level in the integration of Wilmington's healthcare and education systems. Dr. Eden Sr. served as the chief physician, chief staff physician at the community hospital, and according to author John L. Goodwin in Black Wilmington and the North Carolina Way, it was Hubert Eaton who emerged as an instrumental figure in the drive that finally got underway in 1950 for the equalization of black schools. Dr. Eaton helped to organize the black community, and on March 12, 1951, Dr. Eaton and his supporters filed a lawsuit noting that black and white schools of New Hanover County were separate but not equal. Goodwin also notes this lawsuit set the community-wide movement for civil rights into motion. Dr. Eaton Sr. went on to become the first black member of the UNCW Board of Directors and continued throughout his life to fight for the equality of black Wilmingtonians. Today, 1406 Orange Street and 213 South 14th Street are home to One Love Tennis, the Lenny Simpson Tennis and Education Fund. Mr. Simpson grew up in Wilmington, 1 block from the Eatons. After years of playing, coaching, and traveling, Mr. Simpson started One Love Tennis in 2013. He helped the students of Wilmington's Glow Academy connect with the U.S. Tennis Association and set up a letter writing campaign to the USTA asking for Althea Gibson's accomplishments to the history of organized tennis be recognized. This campaign led to a statue at Arthur Ashe Stadium in Queens, New York of Althea, further cementing her place in American tennis history. Mr. Simpson also led the charge for the 2019 restoration of the tennis court at 213 South 14th Street. The court had fallen into disrepair, but with Mr. Simpson's guidance, the court was returned to its original beauty and established a place for the children of One Love Tennis to play and practice. Mr. Simpson was inducted into the Southern Tennis Hall of Fame in 2020 and has long been an advocate for the community around him. Today, Mr. Simpson continues the tradition of Dr. Hubert Eaton Sr. and Althea Gibson striving for success and equality on and off the tennis court. The Historic Preservation staff notes that the designation of 1406 Orange Street and 213 South 14th Street aligns with the Create Wilmington Comprehensive Plan as a place that is a historic resource to the built environment of Wilmington. Staff also notes that the property meets the criteria for designation under Section 2 of the City of Wilmington's local landmark ordinance by age. The dwelling is 93 years old and the tennis court additions are over 50. Also under Section 2, the property has special significance as an especially important site associated with persons and groups that have contributed significantly to the heritage, culture, and development of Wilmington, not only throughout Althea Gibson's residency, but also Dr. Eaton Sr.'s long history of fighting for equality of black Wilmingtonians. Lastly, staff notes the high-level integrity to the home and the tennis court. The house and court appear very much as they did when Dr. Eaton Sr., his family, and Althea Gibson lived and played on the court. The City of Wilmington Historic Preservation Commission, the North Carolina State Historic Preservation Office, and the City of Wilmington staff all very strongly support the designation of 1406 Orange Street and 213 South 14th Street as a local landmark. Thanks.
Thank you. Any questions of staff? Okay. At this time, I'd like to recognize the property owner.
Is there a question? Oh, sorry.
At this time, I'd like to recognize the property owner. Another Mrs. Simpson is here. Good to see you, Lenny. You've done a wonderful job on the house. It's phenomenal. It's fantastic. Congratulations. Thank you. I will go through the whole process here, but I will open the public hearing and ask if anybody in the public wishes to speak on this particular item.
Good afternoon, council and staff. My name is Evelyn Bryant, and this is our subcommittee chair along with our part of our commission members. So thank you for allowing us to speak. And as you know, the purpose of our commission is to plan, develop, implement community projects to recognize, increase the awareness of the contributions of African Americans to Wilmington's history, to encourage and assist African American history, to recognize the sites in the community that are significant to African American history.
I'm Willie Black. I'm on the subcommittee for the commission. And I just want to add that the commission is very pleased to see this being presented to you all tonight. And we are very anxious to see this designation come to fruition. Thank you.
And we've been working on this for what, over 2 years?
Over 2 years.
2 years. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Anybody else? And Travis?
Good evening, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, Council. Travis Gilbert, Historic Wilmington Foundation. I just wanted to say how enthusiastic the foundation is to support this local landmark. I want to thank Evelyn and Willie and the entire team at the commission for all these years of work. I know the city clerk has been behind this for several years. I want to thank you for your work to make tonight possible, and Jessica Baldwin and Megan Bajik at the Historic Preservation Planning Office. So we endorse this local landmark application. I believe Jessica's report on the significance of the site and how the site fits within the parameters of the program does not need to be elaborated upon. But I do want to note that designating the Eaton House as a local landmark will continue the cultural and geographic diversity of the local landmark program here in our city. There is just one other local landmark in the Westbrook-Ardmore National Register Historic District. So if you choose tonight, this will join the Fire Station number 5 there at Wrightsville Avenue and 17th Street. Additionally, I think it goes without saying that this would be the only Craftsman bungalow that would be a local landmark, so increasing the architectural diversity of the local landmark program. And lastly, I just want to speak tonight about the power of the local landmark program. This is a phenomenal resource for our city to designate buildings and parcels that are culturally and historically significant and merit certain regulations and protections without expanding the local historic districts. You go one parcel at a time. And we are heartened by the city's commitment to protecting local African-American historic sites using the power of the local landmark program. So, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Mark, did you have a comment? Did you have a comment? Yes.
Yes, sir. Ms. Bryant just alluded to the fact that this process has been going on for 2 years. Well, this part has been going on for 2 years, but Mr. and Ms. Simpson, Lenny, it's been going on a long time, way back. Going in that house before they owned it, seeing the people living in it, and standing there watching him say, I used to come here and we'd go upstairs and we'd do this and do that. It was a real treat. And things like this, even as important as this is, it takes somebody like a Lenny Simpson to be the horsepower behind it and never let go, and he never did. And this has been a long time coming, and it should have happened a long time ago, but God love it. I'm glad it's here tonight. Thank you. Thank you, Lenny.
Thank you. Thank you. Anybody else? Mr. Burnett?
I would dare let this opportunity go by without saying to Mr. and Mrs. Simpson, we thank you for all that you do. I had an opportunity to work with One Love, and they take kids to New York to watch the U.S. Open. Their kids serve as tennis ball people, you know. But that's not all. They also do tutoring and helping the kids not only become great on the tennis court, but become better citizens off the tennis court. So I'm just honored. They even do a crazy thing, like almost monthly, they'll do a food drive where they just get canned goods and all that kind of stuff and just feed people that come by in their cars. So we are just honored to have you all as citizens here, and I am just honored to be able to pass this motion.
Thank you.
Offer the motion. Yes, sir.
Well, Lenny, since this is Lenny Fest,
Yeah.
and I have to give you a lot of kudos. I'm glad to see this preserved, and I'm glad to see that this is a very historic landmark for our community and our nation. And I also know that you were very instrumental in pushing that a statue be erected there in in Flushing, New York, where the U.S. Open is played, for Althea Gibson. And I know that you were very instrumental. You were the fire behind that. And that's also very powerful. And to have that commission there in New York at the U.S. Open was outstanding. And I know you brought a lot of young people there from the One Love Tennis go there and to witness that was outstanding. And I just want to say on behalf of the city and of all the citizens, thank you for your public service to the community and what you mean to our community. Thank you very much. So with that, I'm going to close the public hearing. We have a motion to approve by Councilmember Barnett, second by Councilmember Ravenbark. Discussion. All in favor of that motion, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? That item passes unanimously on first reading. Is there a motion to waive second reading? Motion made by Councilmember Ravenbark, second by Mayor Pro Tem Haynes. Discussion. All in favor of that motion, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. The ayes have it. Congratulations. Job well done. God bless. That brings us to our next item of business, which is item PH4, which is an ordinance renaming a private road currently called West Sig Road to Switchyard Road. At this time, I'd like to recognize our city manager, Ms. Tony Caudill. Mr. Caudill.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Information Technology Director Brian Scott will overview this item for us.
Good evening, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, and council members. We received an application, next slide please, to rename West Sig Road to Switchyard Road. If you see the map in front of you, the lake there, just north of the lake is the fire station at Cinema Drive. We did receive a majority of applicants. Majority of the property owners have signed the renaming and approval of it. We have to have one property owner change their address, but they signed the affidavit to say they're okay with changing their property. And to let you know, unfortunately, the applicant is out of town this week, and I'll try to answer whatever questions I can. So with that, make it short and simple for you.
Okay. Then questions of staff? Yes.
Wet Sig.
Sorry, does that mean anything?
It was a gentleman who built that road and built his plant. He did boats all the way at the very end, and he just named it Wet Sig Road.
Oh, okay, yeah. We couldn't find anything in our records. Thank you, Mr. Ravenbark. The reason it's going to Switchyard is because of the Switchyard Apartments, and there's also a business along that road with the name Switchyard.
Okay.
So that's why they're suggesting the Switchyard name.
All right, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay. And you say the applicant is out of town?
The applicant is out of town, and he was in a desire to get this moving forward because of the time frame it's taken. And if there are any issues, we could postpone it till the next meeting, and he'd be happy to attend if there's a problem.
That's fine. Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to go through the process because I have to by state statute. Since the applicant is not here, I'm going to go ahead and open the public hearing and ask if anyone in the public wishes to speak on this particular item. Seeing none, are there any further comments, Madam Clerk? Okay. I will now ask the council, are there any further questions? Okay. I will close the public hearing and ask for the wishes of council. We have a motion to approve by Councilmember Barnett, second by Councilmember Ravenbark. Discussion. All in favor of that motion, please indicate by saying aye. Any opposed? The item passes unanimously on first reading. Is there a motion to waive second reading? Motion made by Councilmember Ravenbark, second by Councilmember Anderson. Discussion. All in favor of that motion, please indicate by saying aye. Any opposed? Item passes unanimously on first as well as second reading. That brings us to our next item of business, which is item PH5, which is the public hearing on CAPER, Consolidated Annual Performance Evaluation Report for CDBG and Home Funds. At this time, I'd like to recognize our city manager, Mr. Tony Caudill. Mr. Caudill.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Community Development and Housing Planner Suzanne Rogers will overview this item. While she's making her way to the podium, I'll remind council that this is just a public hearing. No action is required at the close of the hearing.
Thank you, Mr. Caudill, Mr. Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem Haynes, members of City Council. As you all will recall, at the end of every fiscal year, we submit a report to HUD on our performance, and this is that time. So we are required to have a 15-day public comment period to publish that public comment period and distribute copies of the CAPER, the performance report, at the local library, city manager's office, our office, and make it available. That public comment period began September 12th and will end September 27th. Any comments received tonight or throughout the public comment period will be included in the final report submitted to HUD. As you all know, 2022 has had some challenges. Inflation, labor shortages, and a very crazy housing market with increasing prices and limited inventory. So that's a context of which we were carrying out our programs. Some highlights, and I won't go through all of these, but a few. We had a total of 7 homebuyer assistance loans, HOP loans and down payment assistance, good attendance at the homebuyer education sessions, 124. South State Bank joined Corning Credit Union, First Citizens, and Truist as a partner bank for our HOP program. 3 vacant and dilapidated houses were rehabbed for rental, and 6 homeowners had their homes receive rehabilitation repairs. As you know, we became a certified housing counseling agency. I'll point out that 51% of our contracts and subcontracts went to minority business enterprises. Our lead remediation program completed 14 units, and your human services grants program that you award annually, over 3,600 youth participated in after-school programs and summer programs, and some of those youth and some adults were also involved in summer employment and job skills and job training programs, a little over 1,300. And of course, council funded gap financing, and we've received 4 applications and brought to you recommendations so far for 2 projects that you're familiar with, Starway and Canopy Point. This is an example of one of our rental rehab projects, looking at just the kitchen that was rehabilitated, restored, and so now this is an affordable rental house over on North 7th Street. So who benefits? Very low, extremely low income persons and households are the major beneficiaries of the CDBG home and general fund programs that you support. The majority of the beneficiaries are African American, white make up 28%, and Hispanics 11%. For every dollar in CDBG and home funds, $2.18 in other funds were leveraged. So your other local general funds and other grant funds. So in revenues, for all of the programs that are administered through the Community Development and Housing section, including entitlement, your grant funds, revolving loan funds, bank matches on the HOP loans, it was about $12 million. And this is just showing the breakdown of those revenues for you. Expenditures in total, we spent about $3.7 million, And this shows the breakdown by funding source of those expenditures. Oops. Dylan, can you make it go back one? I'm sorry. Thank you. And then the breakdown by activity, you'll see that housing is the by large percentage of the activities that are funded through these programs. And this just brings all that together. So looking at funds available, 12 million, funds expended, about 3.7, leaving a balance of about 8.1, and then loans in the pipeline at the end of the year, about 4.3 million. So we do have ongoing resources to continue our work, and that's always a good thing to say. Any questions?
Yes, Suzanne, on the affordable housing component, could you go back to the slide in regards to Starway? The commitment was 3.5 million of ARPA, and then the county was also contributing to that particular development also.
Yes, sir.
278 units. The 278, that's all of those units are 30% AMI? That's the majority of them? Do we know?
No, sir. Those units will be for households making about 65% AMI and down. So they have a unit mix that's required by the tax credit program. So many of the units are for folks at 30% and then on up.
Okay.
But they're all affordable rents.
And the 72 units at Canopy Point, which is the one that we brought into the community, into the city, those units are all for senior citizens.
Senior citizens with the same income restrictions.
Okay. And in addition to that, the rental assistance program and the HOP program, do you have any numbers on those?
In terms of how much has been spent?
No, how many units in total? I'm trying to get a balance of the number of units total for the year. And that was a commitment we made to the community about putting more money into affordable housing. And I'd just like to see a breakdown. You don't have to give it to me right now, but a number of units from the HOP program, what we have done with Starway, what we've done with Canopy Point, and what we've done with rental rehab or anything else that ties directly into affordable housing.
Absolutely. So we closed 3 HOP loans in 2022. We have 13 pre-qualified borrowers. And if you'll recall, when I came to you with the loan guideline updates, that was part of the reason in the tight housing market. So folks just have not been able to find homes that they can afford, even though they're pre-qualified. So we made some changes to the down payment, as you remember, and we're going to do a push for HOP rehabs so that we can get some of the older housing stock acquired and rehabbed. If you remember through that, folks could get up to $75,000 in money to rehab a house that they would not have to pay back, so that doesn't add to their mortgage. So that's a strategy there. But I think the market, and you all would know better than I, is starting to calm down a little bit. So we have seen some HOP loans come through, in the month since June. For down payment assistance loans, so those are for people buying houses who may be with Habitat or another bank program and not coming through HOP. 2 rental rehab loans, which created 3 units this past year. We do have some in the pipeline, and we held a workshop and had, if my memory serves me, about 4 folks who were interested. So we've got some interest. Again, difficult to, not making excuses, but the facts are it's difficult to compete with investors. And you'll remember that we raised the maximum loan amount from $125,000 to $200,000 to make that more feasible. And then 6 owner-occupied rehabs. and 13 pre-qualified in the pipeline. So we're working through those and still have a lot of interest in those programs. Is that helpful, sir?
Yeah, that is helpful, and that's good. I mean, this is one of the bigger years that we've seen in respect with some of these larger developments that have come forward. And I would imagine that you have a lot of tax credit, I would imagine, developers out there that are looking for opportunities within the incorporated city, or is?
Yes, sir. I think that the biggest challenge for tax credit developers, or the things that we at the city would get called about, is available land. And, you know, there's some economies of scale in these projects, so they need a fair amount of land. But we do have 2 loans in the gap financing pipeline that we're working on the due diligence process for now. So those will be coming forward, and hopefully more.
All right. And our funds are still, we still have, I would imagine, I know that we exhaust those funds usually throughout the year. Are we near exhaustion now?
We are in a good position in terms of resources.
Okay.
You know, I think shared goal is to see affordable housing that meets the demand in the community, and that's a big demand. Production, saving our existing stock, and helping people become homeowners.
Okay. Very good. Okay, Mr. Waddell?
Thank you.
Thank you.
I would agree that getting people to homeownership is certainly key. How much additional funds do we have earmarked for in the HOP program that has been unutilized? We got 3 home buyers, but there's 13 that are pre-qualified. I may have missed it.
No, sir. So in the HOP program, we use 2 sources of funds for that: CDBG and the revolving loan fund 76. You'll see down there about.
So like 4.5 roughly.
Yeah, so we have a balance remaining of 3.2 million in HOP, but we have 1.2 in loans in the pipeline. And then for the CDBG and revolving loan, which is actually revolving loan 74, we have 1.3 million available at the end of the year, and we have 1.4 million in loans in the pipeline.
So that's significant. So are we having an issue getting people to come in and apply for these loans, or is that the fact that they can't get the property that they are designating that they want under contract because of competition outside of the HOP program?
That's been the issue, yeah.
Okay, so it's not a question of do folks know about it, and are they coming in the door and submitting their applications? You've got pre-qualified people ready to go.
Yes, sir. And we've had good attendance at all of our homebuyer education classes, which we have about 10 of those a year, once a month on a Friday or a Saturday.
If somebody, that's great. If somebody wanted to apply, what's the quickest way for them to do that?
The way that you would apply is you can go on the city website or call our office, and we will register you for a home buyer education class. That's the step 1.
Okay.
And then once you take that class and you learn about the HOP program and the whole process of buying a home, then you come in and you start your pre-qualification or pre-approval process, so credit reports, incomes, all that, and then select your realtor and find the house.
Anybody else? Okay. Mr. Barnett?
Thank you for your work, and thank you for your diligence in trying to, to get people in the homes. So we really appreciate that.
Thank you. We're all, we're a team effort. I appreciate your support.
Thank you, Suzanne. At this time, I'll open up the public hearing and ask if anyone wants to speak on item PH5. Madam Clerk, have you received any additional comments? Okay. Are there any further questions from council? Okay, hearing none, I will now close the public hearing. No action will be taken at this time. Next item of business is our ordinances. Item 01 is an ordinance amending the City Code 5-31, soliciting business in streets, and Section 6-16, begging or soliciting alms, contributions, goods, or services by intimidation. At this time, I'd like to recognize our city attorney, Mr. John Joy. Mr. Joy.
Mr. Mayor, this is the presentation that was given to council yesterday. If council would like that presentation again, we can do that, or if council would just have any questions, happy to answer those. I'll leave it with council as to what level of information you would like at this point.
I'll leave it up to council members. Are there any further questions from council in respect to the ordinance? Okay. All right, then I'm going to...
Yeah, John. Sorry, Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead.
But John, I think you should give the audience a brief overview of what you presented to us yesterday, just so they won't be out of the loop when we make a decision or when we ask you specific questions.
Certainly, and I would just ask Dylan if he would pull up the PowerPoint so I can reference it. So, Mayor and Council, as I began yesterday, anytime we are talking about the First Amendment, I always begin with this quote from the Supreme Court of Kentucky. It is because whether people are advocates for the First Amendment or they are folks who don't want to hear what other people have to say on that particular topic, it is something that we often have to do, as the court says, and that is embrace discomfort. I always like to begin with that. And this takes us back to a presentation I gave previously to council in discussing panhandling, and specifically panhandling from the median, but it also has many other aspects. In fact, our ordinance prohibits currently 13 different aspects of it. So as a general rule that's come down from case law, this is out of the hands of our legislature, it's out of the hands of our governor or our council members. The cases from the Supreme Court essentially say you just can't generally ban panhandling. It is considered First Amendment activity. It is free speech. So when we went over that with council, this was back in July, and previously we had talked in February. Council has certainly worked hard for the citizens of Wilmington in trying to wrestle with the issues of panhandling and the safety issues that certainly come from that. Part of what was given to me was to look at our current ordinance. We weren't enforcing several aspects because, frankly, the case law had developed to make where several of the things just weren't going to pass constitutional muster. As some of the examples, our old ordinance made it illegal to solicit or panhandle after dark. It specifically said after sunset and before sunrise. And that's just overbroad. That's not something the courts will support. So what I've done is maybe the forerunner of the overall city initiative on this is my office looked at the ordinance itself. You actually have a red line in your packet that shows you exactly what we have kept and what we have removed, or we are asking you to remove, I should say. And what it comes down to is there are two aspects of panhandling that my office and I recommend that council retain, maintain the status quo, actually modify it a little bit, and that is one, we prohibit aggressive panhandling. And aggressive panhandling is where someone through intimidation, not necessarily force, but they put themselves close, they move close. It's a totality of the circumstances analysis, but if through intimidation you are soliciting people, that's out of bounds. That's something that we prohibit, and we would recommend that that stays in our ordinance as prohibited. The second one is panhandling within a certain distance of an automatic teller machine. Currently, our ordinance says 15 feet. Quite frankly, neither my office nor I could come up with what the impetus or the support for picking 15 feet precisely was. What we're asking you to do is to amend it to 21 feet, and we base that on some old law enforcement studies that have been done that said that if someone was coming at you, the 21 feet, that's the danger zone. That's where it's very difficult for you to respond appropriately in time. And we notice that when someone is at an ATM machine, they have a split focus. They have to operate the machine. Sometimes, if you're like me, it takes you a couple tries to get it right. You want to be sure you get your card back. And you certainly are very likely to be withdrawing money. And that is something that we feel like moving folks back to 21 feet from an ATM makes sense. Also note that most ATM machines are not going to be on a public sidewalk or in a public street, which is a traditional public forum. They very likely will be in a parking lot that is a public vehicular area, but it's not necessarily a public forum. I believe that those two prohibitions are something that are constitutional, and I would recommend that you retain it. But other than that, the regulations that when they were put in place years and years ago, we didn't have the benefit of the case law. We do now. Specifically, the next slide I have up here is going to direct the public, if they would like to read up on this, or if the media would like to. I know they have. Those are the cases that I look at and I see as the leading cases in this area. Specifically, Reynolds v. Middleton, that's the Fourth Circuit case. For the public's benefit, we in North Carolina are in the Fourth Circuit. So the cases they lay down, unless they're trumped and superseded by a Supreme Court case, they apply to us. The Supreme Court cases that you see there, McCullen, Reed v. Gilbert, Alston v. Reagan, they have, those rulings, in my opinion, only bolster the holding in Reynolds v. Middleton. They do nothing to set it aside. Those are the reasons that we've brought to you as City Council an amendment to our ordinance. It's so that citizens don't read our ordinance and think, oh, well, why in the world is the Wilmington Police not arresting someone for that? It's because it's not constitutional. That's why. It's just a matter of getting this down to what really is accurate, what really is the state of the law, and that's the ordinance that you have before you tonight that we are recommending the approval of those amendments.
Okay. We have a question here from Mr. Waddell. Mr. Waddell.
Thank you, Mr. Joy. I know the vast majority of the emails, texts, calls that I get within regards to panhandling aren't really in regards to panhandling itself. They're more in regards to public safety issues, and primarily those being in impeding pedestrians impeding traffic. So I'm just wondering, just for our sake and the public's sake, you know, we certainly have ordinances on the books directing law enforcement, should they see someone, pedestrian impeding traffic, to intervene. That correct?
Absolutely, and that's a great point. We don't have it in this presentation because it's very focused, but in our previous presentations, I had a list of several statutes and ordinance that go to the behaviors that often get labeled as panhandling. Maybe they're associated with it, but they're separate. They're separate issues that can be dealt with: littering, impeding traffic. If you were to threaten someone or if you were to assault someone, many times the complaints we get from citizens, they're termed as panhandling, but as soon as I start reading the facts, I find out, well, no, this was about littering, or no, this was about assault, or, well, this person's house got broken into after they saw someone they didn't recognize in their neighborhood. There are many different aspects, and you are absolutely right. It is illegal under our state law for the streets and our city code for sidewalks. You cannot impede traffic.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Okay. All right. If there are no other questions or comments, I'm going to ask for the wishes of council in respect to the ordinance. We have a motion to approve by Councilmember Barnett, second by Mayor Pro Tem Haynes. Discussion. All in favor of that motion, please indicate by saying aye. Any opposed? Item passes unanimously on first reading. Is there a motion to waive second reading? Motion made by Councilmember Rivenbark, second by Councilmember Barnett. Discussion. All in favor of that motion? Yes. Yes.
I just hope that what we do here tonight, the calls that I get or the frustration that I hear is, why don't y'all just do something? I mean, it just sounds so easy to do something. And I'm leading the way with that thought. Why don't we do something? And then when you dig down into it and this comes up, we're doing all we can do to protect people's constitutional rights. Neil and I were just talking, you know, the sidebar, you know, the Constitution guarantees you freedom of speech, but what confuses me is it guarantees you the right to do this. And I don't know how that you can equate one with the other. Free speech. If you're a nuisance and you're standing there in a median that's this wide and traffic at 55 miles an hour both ways, it's dangerous to the motorist as well as to the person standing there. So I hope that people will understand, and we'll still get the calls, and I expect to, but this is all we can do. Thank you.
All in favor of the second motion, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Item passes unanimously on first as well as second reading. That brings us to our next item of business, which are our resolutions. Item R1 is a resolution extending the period of the message Black Lives Do Matter in Racism Now and authorizing the city manager to execute an addendum to the agreement for Gervais Memorial Park. This was sponsored by Councilmember Spears, so I'm going to recognize Councilmember Kevin Spears at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Oh, here we are again. Another year later, another inch closer to an attempt at the lives we want to live in this community. But not only in this community, but in this world. And I've racked my brain all day to come up with something profound to say about why we need to extend the mural for Black Lives Do Matter and End Racism Now. And the only thing that I could actually come up with was just the facts. The work has not been done yet. There is still a need for this mural in our community, and we know that. Do we make an attempt to make this community a better place? At times we do. But there's still more work that needs to be done in this community. There's still calls, there's still messages, there's still people advocating for the fact, for the acknowledgement of Black lives mattering in society. And so I hope I don't have to debate it. I hope we pass this unanimously, because I hope we all see the need for what we're trying to do, for how great we're trying to make Wilmington, but not only Wilmington, but the world. And that cannot happen until we're all on the same level, until we're all being treated the same, until we're all equals. Whether it's better pay, whether it's how we're being treated when we're approached by law enforcement, and that, trust me, that's not a dig on any law enforcement officer in the building, outside of the building. We all know they're good cops, they're bad cops, but we do understand that there's an issue in America. And I am still standing behind the need for this sign. And if any argument is to say it's not costing the city of Wilmington a dime, it's not in the way of anything, it's in is in Gervais Park. I don't even think before 2 years ago, anybody knew where Gervais Park was. It's not a place up until now that people even frequent. And I won't even slight the 18 artists who helped to design something so beautiful that every time that I ride by there, I still look. I'm still amazed to see it. And I'm certain there's still some new information you could find if you went to see it. So I won't go much longer. I just want to, I wish I never had to come back and ask for a renewal, or I wish there was never the need to even have the sign there, but it is. And so I'm asking for us as a council to extend the existence of the Black Lives Do Matter, End Racism Now sign mural again for another year.
Any further questions, comments? Mr. Waddell?
Yeah, this might be a question for the city manager. I was under the impression that there was a private entity that was kind of ready and eager to move this installation as an art exhibit onto private property. What happened to that?
We don't have any correspondence from anyone who says they're willing to take this. There was some discussion with community groups about it, but there was no firm agreement made between the city and those groups to take it at the close of the display period.
But there was some interest with some community groups.
Yes, sir.
So, yeah, I think the question here really is what precedent are we going to set for future public speech installations? Personally, I feel that 2 years is a substantial amount of time for a public speech art installment, no matter what it says. And I feel it would probably be a great asset to a private art gallery or displayed in one of our many nonprofits around Wilmington. I think it's prudent for this council to set some policy for future public speech installations. Perhaps that's something that's best built out in the governance committee and then brought here before us. Something that would give a concrete sunset period for any future art installation, enough to display a message, but not enough time for something to become worn down or ultimately become a financial liability to the city. 3 years for a public speech installation, as this resolution is suggesting, is in my opinion too long. And for that reason, I'm going to make a substitute motion, and I'm going to move that the sign be removed no later than December 27th of this year, which is roughly a 90-day extension from today. And I think that'll prove sufficient time for the city staff to work alongside the arts community and find a suitable permanent location for a piece of Wilmington history. And with that, I'd like the governance committee to address potential for future city policy with matters related to public speech.
And Tony, I was looking at the original resolution that was passed in 2020, and in that resolution, there was to be some staff or agreement to come forward in respect to public speech, in respect of public policy, because I know that Black Lives Do Matter has been adopted by the city. And in the event that we do have further public speech or people that want to come forward with public speech, we don't even have a policy in place as to time and element. And I know that when we adopted this resolution, it was for 1 year. We extended it for an additional year last year when Kevin asked for us to do so. And what I'd like to know is, have we had any discussion within staff in respect to any kind of public policy in respect to this? Because this is kind of new ground for the city of Wilmington and how we handle it, and when people come forward and ask us that, and if councils and future councils want to adopt some public speech at some point in time, how do we deal with it? I mean, when this was put together, thinking that Jenna Robertson, the professor at the university. I think Cedric Harrison was another one. Some folks from Dreams, I believe, were the ones that kind of brought this thing forward. We adopted it. Originally they wanted to put something in the street. We were concerned about closing the street and then cars riding over it, and I think we came out with a much better display, and I think it was very tastefully done, and the artist did an outstanding job. But have we had any further evaluation of a public policy in respect to that?
In short, no, sir. We have not had a comprehensive look at this. We've had some discussion at the staff level, but we've not taken any initiative to get a comprehensive policy together. We certainly can put that back on the front burner.
Do you have any idea as to how long that public policy would take to do? I mean, Luke has indicated to take this to the governance committee, which I think is the appropriate place to at least start the discussion and look at it. But how long do you think it would take?
I would say that it's probably going to take at least a 6-month period. And the reason I say that is we know governance has rules of order that it's looking at its next meeting. And then November and December are always suspect times for policy decision-making issues. But I would imagine that we should be able to develop something and come back within a 6-month period, well within that 6-month period.
Okay. Mr. Spears?
Tony, a better question is, have we had any other organizations, individuals asked to put up some public speech or for the city to put public speech anywhere else of this magnitude?
Not to my knowledge, no, sir.
Thank you.
Mr. Barnett?
I would have to chime in. I'm with Kevin. I sure wish we didn't have to bring this subject up. But because of where we are in our country and what we live, I've got a video that I want Dalen to show for a second. Because perhaps you don't see it from our eyes, okay? And I just need to show you this video, and if you'll look at this for just a moment, and then I'll continue my conversation.
Right. She's black. Oh my.
Dang, she had it in her soul, like she felt it in her spirit.
She's black. She is black.
The black version. Ariel's a black girl. I like the black girl one. Are you kidding me? Ariel's black.
Okay. Dale, you can stop it. Okay, and I share that because 6 days ago, Disney put out a promo that said the mermaid, and I don't know if mermaids are real or not, but that the mermaid is going to be black. And for those little kids, it mattered. Okay? And what I think I want us to see is that for those little kids, that sign matters. You know, just recognizing that it's important. You know, so I would support Kevin's motion that we continue it for another year, and in the process, do all that we need to do with governance to come up with the forms and the proper whatever we were supposed to do in the beginning, I think I'd like to do that.
Mr. Mayor, I want to call to your council's attention. Mr. Moten just had a discussion with Mr. Joy that we did, in one paragraph of the naming policy, address this issue with regard to public speech. And essentially, Mr. Joy, I'm going to call on you here to back me up, but essentially we said we would not undertake this again as a part of that naming policy. Is that correct, Mr. Joy?
That is correct, and I'm going to ask council to draw back, and I know Councilmember Waddell, you weren't on council at that time, but these were tough times. We were down at the convention center, and a lot of that may be difficult to recall, but we had a long discussion about again, the First Amendment and the Supreme Court cases that have defined it. And I will tell you, Councilmember Rivenbark is right. One small change in the facts and you get a totally different result from the court. In this context, we look to the case of Pleasant Grove City v. Summum. If folks will remember, back in 2009, that was in Utah. There was a Ten Commandments memorial that was in the park in that city, and another group wanted to put up a different obelisk, if you will. What the court said is, when you put something up like that, that in that case it was permanent, other cases it had not been quite as permanent, but when you put something up like that in a park, the government speech is controlling by allowing it to be in the park in that kind of a fashion. When you have that kind of a monument, it's considered government speech. And historically, there has not been a First Amendment regulation on what government itself wants to say. That was part of council's thinking in the resolution that they passed back then. If you'll notice in it, there's a part that says the city expressly adopts that Black Lives Do Matter as government speech. In fact, the original offering was not a monument that said do matter, it said Black Lives Matter. Council asked if that could be changed, inserted a word, and it, to my mind, and I discussed it at length with Councilmember O'Grady at that time, that made it clear that that was government speech. And that meant that council could agree to have this monument put up for a specific time, and that would not open it up to other monuments that other groups might want to put up. It was seen at that time as a specific one-time affair, and then Mr. Moten was tasked with helping the initiative to look at this as part of naming and renaming streets, accepting memorials. It was all rolled into one, and after a lot of public input, it was, in fact, a lot of the task force group that was asked to serve, they said, you just can't please all the different folks who might come and want to bring you monuments, and they recommended that if the city wants to commission it, if the city wants to pay for it, if the city wants to do its own speech, no problem. But they recommended that the city get out of the business of accepting it from any groups, not trying to affect what was done. I think that was a special circumstance. And council agreed and adopted the policy that it has, and it says, upon the adoption of this policy, the city will no longer accept donations or loans of private memorials to be placed on public property. This is council's policy. If council wants to re-examine it, change it, you certainly may do so, but it made sense to give you the full context to assist you in your discussions and debate at the moment.
Very good. Ms. Spears?
Thank you, Councilman Barnett, for that video. And I'll give another instance, one not as pleasant as that one, where I received the email today from a parent who has been emailing me for over a week. And we all know that I'm not a part of the school board, even though I did run for the school board in 2016. But a lot of parents still reach out to me for issues that they have in New Hanover County school system. And this parent was contacting me because her son had been called the N-word by a young white student in a New Hanover County school. And after a few times of being called the N-word by this other student, this student decided to slap this young black kid. And the young black kid did not defend himself. And the threat of him defending himself was for him to be suspended from school. But this young white kid the parent inquired about what disciplinary actions would take place. The school told her that they could not, she wasn't privy to that information, and ultimately nothing was done to this little kid who decided to use very negative language and ultimately violence. So if you don't feel that there's a need for this sign in our community, I beg to differ.
Mr. Ironbark.
Well, you certainly have that right to differ. That's what our country's all about. We made an agreement that we would put this up for a year. And then a year came by, and it was supposed to come down, and you came back and said, we'll do another. I said, all right, let's do it one more year. And here we are back. We'll be doing this 20 years from now. We had an agreement. Let's stick by the agreement. The video is sweet. I love it. Your example is bad. That has nothing to do with it down there at the Gervais Park. It's time for that sign to come down.
Mr. Anderson.
Well, I guess when it comes up, I often feel like I need to kind of reiterate. Everybody seems to going to speak, so I guess I felt I ought to speak. But I personally support every word that mural says. Always have. But I voted for it. I voted against it last time for the reasons, I guess, where Mr. Waddell was leading. I've just never felt it's the government's place to speak out in that way. I think we hear from all different type factions and all different groups, and we try to weigh and do what's just and best for the greater good. But if NRA or pro-gun or pro-choice, and I'm not saying all these are equal. I'm just saying these are different. They're certainly not, but they are all different groups that could certainly come to us and want to have us embrace their speech. This body, I don't think, is really geared toward any of these things I would mention or getting involved in, but some future council might be. And we've set that precedent. I didn't want to set that precedent, whether it's, something wonderful, help Ukraine, or somebody else wants to build, put a sign that says build a wall, or I don't want to support any of that. I think it's better to be done on private property and to be done in the marketplace of voting and electing people and helping each other in the community, rather than taking government property, public property, and making a political or making public speech, I think is how our attorneys refer to it. And John, no offense, but I think a good attorney can find case law that'll support whatever he's trying to argue. So I don't know what Indiana city it was. If I was an attorney, we could dig around and find something that might not support it. So I think it's really just more. It's more about what we feel is best for our city, and we've had it up, and it is attractive. Don't have any issue with that either. I fear the reality is, unfortunately, racism's going to be with us for a pretty good while, many years to come. Now, surely it improves. Hopefully, it improves. As Kevin said, inch by inch, every day. But it's going to be here. So you start to ask yourself, what's the point, what's the day when we go, okay, now we've done it, it's time for it to come down. So it's really more of a question is, when is it permanent, you know? Or when does it become permanent in the, John, in the eyes of the law, or does it? I mean, if it's there 25 years and all of a sudden somebody says, let's take it down, I mean, it's still up to whatever council's.
There is no timer on it except what the agreement says, and what the agreement says now is it is loaned to the city and it is temporary. You could extend it one step at a time for as long as you choose, and that will not change it into a permanent fixture by the law.
Well, I don't know, I hadn't done my, Mr. Waddell came up with December, whatever it was, 27th, whatever it was. I don't know how exactly that date came about, but I think we should try to set a date where our goal is to help find another place for it. And whether that's 60, 90, whatever, 120 days, whatever is reasonable. And then we can talk about, we can address, if we haven't found something by then, we can address it again. But we haven't, I don't feel like if we have, tell me, Tony, but I don't know that we've made a big effort to do that. And it just kind of sneaks up on us. We've been very busy with all kinds of things, and a lot of issues that come before us tend to do that. And if we need to set our minds to finding a new home for it. If it's by December 27th, which I could support, or if it's in a year, whatever, we need to set ourselves to trying to find a new home for it. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Ms. Haynes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I guess, tried to just on the fly, spitballing here, that I voted for this initially, and I voted last time to extend it. And I will say I've seen a number of these installations in different places, and I have to say I think it's probably the nicest one I have seen. And if you haven't gotten out of your car and gone and looked at it, it's really well done. So I think it's, and I've been to Black Lives Matter Plaza in DC and everywhere, but we got something that's pretty special here. I do believe that our understanding originally and again last year was that it would be permanent on private property, that we would find a obvious place, and I guess I had heard, and maybe it's not right, that the YWCA on South College was considering taking it, and then everybody would see it there. So I would like to really, I guess, try to deal with, where's the Arts Council? Where's the Cameron Art Museum? Where is the YWCA? Where are people that could take this and install it in a significant place so that it would be permanent and that they could actually maintain it? I want to say strongly that I believe that, we hear this all the time, well, all lives matter. I do believe that all lives cannot matter until everyone realizes that Black lives matter. So I feel that very strongly, and but I think this is something we would be setting this precedent, and it would be very easy for other groups to come and get this council or council in the future to try to come up with something that perhaps we would, they would say it's government speech that we would not support, that most of us, anyway, would not support. So I do chair the governance committee. I don't remember that we dealt with this specific thing specifically, but it's certainly an item that I think should come back to governance if it has been before. I don't believe it was. I believe it was in the naming committee. It was not talking about accepting an art contribution or whatever. that we designated as, which is the first time, I mean, I've been here 12 years or something, it's the first time I had heard from Mr. Joy that we could say something was public speech and accept the reality of that, which we certainly did and did willingly. So I guess, you know, I think it's a good idea of what our newest, youngest member of council has said, that we deal with this at this point. We said we wanted it. It was going to be temporary. We extended it for twice as long as we had originally said. I want to see it in a permanent place that it can be taken care of and that will be perhaps even more visible. I mean, you're flying by the thing now at 45, 50 miles an hour. So if you don't drive down in there and get out of your car and go look at it. But I do support, I guess, what Mr. Waddell has suggested in his substitute motion. And we're having an awful lot of discussion here without a second to Mr. Spears, and we now have
Substitute motion.
now have the substitute motion from Mr. Waddell.
Yeah,
and
I made that a few minutes
and
ago.
I will second that for the sake of further discussion.
Okay. So we have a substitute motion by Mr. Waddell. And Mr. Waddell, will you please repeat your motion? And
Yeah, I move that the sign be removed no later than December 27th, 2022. We gave some discussion after that, but that was the meat of the motion.
And you further had indicated something about taking this to the governance committee in respect to public policy, in respect to public speech?
Absolutely. I'd like, and this can accompany the motion, I don't know if that's proper, but I'd like the governance committee to address the potential city policy for future matters of public speech.
All right, so we have a substitute motion by Councilman Waddell, seconded by Mayor Pro Tem Ains. Discussion. Mr. Spears.
Yeah, my question is, my question is, where do you get December 27th from? Just out of the blue?
No, I looked at it like 90 days. I think it's roughly 90 days.
Okay, fine.
I thought that would be, I thought that was a significant amount of time to find a permanent placement.
I think a year is a significant amount of time, but I don't see the need to move it to a permanent place for what is not in the way. Neil said it himself. It creeps up on you. A lot of this council doesn't even know that it's there. You wouldn't even known it was there if I had not sponsored this resolution. My second thing is this. Is France asking for the Statue of Liberty back? I mean, we're the home of the free, the land of the brave, you know. Everybody wants to come to the land of milk and honey, so hell, let's send the damn Statue of Liberty back to France. Are we done right? America is America, the greatest place on the planet. We don't need that out there. It's green anyway. Let's send it back. Huh? You agree with that? Yeah, I'm sure you do. Let's be honest about it. This is how these things work. This is why you have the need for it. You're not going to have someone who would actually come in here and argue the fact that, hey, no, Wilmington is not as great as you proclaim it to be. But we would find some kind of way to let's move it to a private place. Let's let some organizations take it and put it on display where everybody can see it. The reality is everybody doesn't want to see it. That's why it's down a hill up on stilts and wasn't put on the street. I mean, that wasn't even the first offer they gave us was a little side street where nobody could actually see it. And Jenna and I would not go for that. I anticipated this, but I didn't anticipate it from you, Luke, to be honest. That's all I got to say about it.
Mr. Barnett?
Just some clarity with the motion. Okay, we're saying remove it by the 27th. Is that prior to it coming before governance and governance saying we've got a place for it, and then, of course, governance would have to come back to us. That, I'm trying to.
So the governance is really just, I think this is a policy issue that needs to be discussed with the council and not just continue to kick down the road year over year. And I realize it's a difficult discussion, but I think it's one that needs to be had, and that's why we're elected to do this. And so the governance portion is separate really from the main motion, which is a 90-day, a 90-day period.
90 days movement.
Go ahead and which is to give it what I believe is ample time to find a great place for it to go. I mean, I would think people would line up to put the piece of Wilmington history in somewhere. But my main goal with this is one of policy, and to go ahead and set a concrete policy that we have an understanding and can move forward.
Yeah, I showed the video not so that people think it's a cute video. Okay, I showed the video because I want some of us to think about perhaps what goes on in the minds of black people, and for a number of years, this is not just, it's not just a sign, okay? It's more than a sign. So I just want to make sure that, we don't just remove it and it's done. There's some deep systemic stuff that happens in our country that we need to make aware of, that we need to become more aware of, that we need it to be continuously in our face so that we can do the inch at a time, making it better for everybody. So I still agree that, a year would probably be a good time to do that, but I'm going to support it at least being there for another year.
And Mr. Anderson?
Kevin, and I mean this respectfully, I want to try to have a conversation if I could. In your mind, I mean, I know you can't force to see the future and know that, in a year or two, but I mean, what would make you feel comfortable with it coming down, or do you feel it should be permanent? I guess I kind of want to have that discussion. I mean, does that make sense?
Yeah, and initially I said when the work is done, there would be no need for the sign. But ask yourself as council members, what have we done to move Wilmington forward? What have we actually done to move Wilmington forward as it relates to racial relations, Black Lives Matter? What have we done that's bold, that we've done as a council that says, you know what, we as a council stand in solidarity and we acknowledge the lives of these people in our community? What have we done? Of course we give money for affordable housing. Of course we give money to nonprofit organizations. We're in the business of doing that. But what have we done that says, hey, we know life is hard for you. We know sometimes you don't get a fair shake. What have we done to push it forward? And like Clifford said, it's more than a sign. It is more than a sign. It's a way of life. It's a way of life for people. It's the artists who, and it's greater than what the artist did, but they put their hearts into it because they knew it mattered to people. Margaret, you said it yourself. It's one of the best ones in the country. It's one of the best ones in the country, and it's ours. It's ours. And you know what? And if it's just a sign to some people, I want it to be more than just a sign to people. I want it to be a promise from us to the people in our community that says we are willing to do the work to make Wilmington great for everybody. That's what it means to me. That's what it means to those people in this audience.
Time
Time has kind of crept by, but I can't remember. I know, gosh, what would that have been? Fall of 20? I don't know. We started we did the staff at the direction of council did do a lot of, in my mind, a lot of heavy lifting with the Rise Up initiative. So I think that is something that we can be proud of. Now, it has a long way to go, and we've been taking little baby steps with it. And it's probably time to have a...
Let me ask you one thing.
Yep.
Rise Together Initiative. What's the biggest thing that the Rise Together Initiative has done?
I don't think it's the staff's place to.
What? Come on, it's the work that we've done as staff. What is the biggest thing that the Rise Together Initiative has done? Because this was a part of the Rise Together Initiative. Am I right?
Yes, sir. It was part of the Rise Together initiative, as it has been with regard to the policies for allocating funding, which you've already made reference to, as it has been for the development of the division, the DE&I work that we're doing there.
You went right where I wanted you to go. Where's our DE&I director at right now?
On vacation.
You know what? Today is his birthday. Happy birthday, Joe. He should have sent us a video saying that there's a need for this in our community.
Well, I guess my point, or where I was headed with it, was that was a symbol. That is a symbol. But we are trying to do things, like you mentioned a minute ago, that are substantial, that will make a difference. And I was really impressed, frankly, with our first, that first report. I don't know if it had a name or whatever. It was the introduction of that program. It was comprehensive and deep, and a deep dive. And it was so much proposed that it looked like it was going to. I'd venture it takes a decade to hit all the things that we brought up. So I would just say that this council has taken initiative, and is there a lot more to do? Yes, sure is. But I do think we have responded and will continue to respond. And if we can follow that roadmap in that program, in that plan, we'll be in a much better place in a few years. So thank you.
Ms. Haynes.
Kevin, I agree with you that it should be permanent. I do not think that it or anything different from that and different speech should be permanent. And I think it's incumbent really upon this council to make sure that it is put somewhere where someone will take care of it, where it is obvious that it is on a public street, that it is hopefully permanent. But I believe that permanent should be on private property. We have a lot of organizations. We have an arts council here that works on public art. We have the Cameron Art Museum that has done a number of things supporting the African American community. There are a lot of opportunities here, and I would like to see that be given an opportunity to try to find a place of permanence. Now, let me say that I chair the governance committee. It's not up to us as a committee to find a location. What we as a committee, is my understanding, and I certainly stand to be corrected, would be to come up with some policy, some direction, which is, of course, all that council is supposed to do anyway, is to decide policy and direction for this or anything in the future that we may need to deal with that someone wants the city to consider to be public speech, whether it be a religious symbol or racial symbol or a symbol about gender or anything, whatever. I think we do need a stronger policy, and just to confirm, governance, what Mr. Moten brought out, governance has not dealt specifically with this of public speech and erecting any kind of memorial or signage or anything like that. Is that right? I mean, I do not remember that, and I've been on governance since it was created.
No, ma'am. We have not brought anything forward for your consideration with regard to a policy change on this matter.
Okay, so we should, and I I agree with Kevin, it ought to be permanent, but I disagree that it should be permanent on public property and sit there as public speech. And I think at this point we should call for the question.
We have Mr. Spears. Mr. Spears?
Yeah, I never asked for it to be permanent. I'm just asking for another year. That's what I asked for, another year. I did say that I would come back every year if I had to, as long as I'm here, sitting in this seat, voted for by the people to be here, to represent this. I'll come back every year, because had I not raised the issue, then it would have had to come down next week. So again, it wasn't on anyone's radar but mine and staff. So now, because I brought it up, it needs to go somewhere else for someone else to see, to be on private property? No, it wasn't. You didn't have an issue with it for the other 359 days. So now it needs to go by December the 27th because of what? No one. Luke, you're a crafty guy. You're an intelligent young man. I give you that. But this didn't come up on your radar just to, like, be moved for what? What is it doing? It's not in the way of anything. It's not causing us any issue as a council. We don't have one complaint about it.
May I respond, since I was Councilman Spears? I treat this agenda item like I treat every single agenda item. When it comes up and I see it and it's sent to us by staff, that's when I find out about most things. And that's when I take a deep dive into them, as I'm going to on the next two resolutions. We're probably going to be here a while, because I got a lot more to say about R2 and R3. That's what I do every single time. I've done it since I've been elected here. That's how I treat the agenda. And so this is a policy issue to me, and that's why I brought it up as a policy issue. We have an open-ended no policy right now, and I think it needs to be addressed. There was a year and then an extension from a year. I've had a motion and a second on the floor for a 90-day extension to move it to a suitable private property place, and then the governance committee will pick it up from there.
Okay. Yeah, I disagree with Kevin in the sense that this council has not done anything for minority people, you know. But I don't want that to get out. I don't want people to kind of think that, you know, the council is not really supportive, especially with the Rise to Initiative and all the things that we're trying to do with housing. I think the thing that I just want to end with this, and this will be my last statement, is what I think my position is I want us to understand that it's more than a sign. You know, it's not just that sign. It's the idea of we want to make sure that we're aware of the special needs that affect the things that happen to African Americans across the country. And we want to just kind of keep that on the forefront. That's the whole bottom line. We want to keep that on the forefront. So.
We have a motion on the floor to extend it for 90 days with a policy to be evaluated by the governance committee. That was Councilman Waddell made that, second by Mayor Pro Tem.
Unreadiness. I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor. Just. Okay, so 90 days. During the 90 days, who's going to be responsible for finding a place?
We're asking the community, and we're asking our staff to do everything in their power to evaluate. And
Mr. Mayor, if you'll allow me to interrupt, and I know this is going to be a distinction without a difference for most of the council members, but this is a gift to the city. This was not a city-done initiative. This is not owned by the city. And we will work with the people who own the artwork to be able to find a place to do that. And we will do it with a fervor as if it is our own. But I do want council to understand that we don't have the final determination as to where this artwork goes. that the owners of the sign have that final determination.
And no one from the community asked for it to be moved. I just want that to be stated.
Not to my knowledge, no, sir.
Everybody ready to vote?
Yes.
All in favor of that motion, please indicate by saying aye.
Well, wait a minute. Oh,
Okay, passes 5-2. All right, that brings us to the next item of business, which is item R2, which is a resolution authorizing the city manager to enter into an interlocal agreement with New Hanover County to create a pilot program aimed at addressing the needs of the homeless population within the city. This time I'd like to recognize our city manager, Mr. Caudle. Mr. Caudle.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is, as the resolution notes, authorization for the manager to develop and enter into an interlocal agreement with the New Hanover County manager. And it is important to note that the New Hanover County Commissioners have already passed a similar resolution at yesterday's meeting. So they have already voted to enter into this agreement and to begin this program. As you know, unsheltered folks are much more likely than the general population to have health issues, mental conditions, substance abuse prevalent in their population. There is a need to reach out to these folks in order to be able to try to connect them with the services that are available to them. The plan that we have, at least in theory, to try to work out with the county is for the county to provide 4 Department of Social Services employees and the city to provide up to 4 police officers to be paired together to respond to emergent situations that involve the unsheltered population. It's also, more importantly, to establish relationships. Many of you are aware of the program that WDI runs through its contractor with the MSD monies, and there is an individual who reaches out and established a relationship with these unsheltered population. We're trying to, if you will, emulate that and treat everyone across the city and make sure that they have access to the same type of access to services. The program would work in the downtown areas to begin with, and it would augment what WDI is doing through the block-to-block contractor. It would also reach out to other areas of the city where there are unsheltered populations. The city would be responsible for the administration on the police side, which means providing up to 4 officers. It also means providing, as necessary, law enforcement needs, either enforcement of ordinances or, in certain cases, potentially protection for the social workers. The county will be responsible for the administration of the social workers as well as the connection to the necessary services. The county's also agreed to take on the additional cost associated with cleanup of areas where we have unsheltered persons where they create a health hazard. The county has indicated that they would hire an independent contractor to do that. The city will equip our officers with the non-traditional Blueberry uniforms, and we will provide vehicles, non-traditional vehicles, in this case pickup trucks, that will actually perform the services of these, associated with these teams. The officers will be selected to serve on their teams and trained in techniques that are somewhat unique to enforcement of this outreach mechanism. It's important we get folks who want to do this work, folks who understand the importance of this work, and folks who are trained to do this work. The program would be a pilot for a 9-month period with the ability to extend it up to an additional 12 months beyond the 9-month period. And funding for the program will initially come from ARPA funds, both on the county side and the city side. Once those funds run out, depending on the success of the program, we would then look to local dollars to be able to fund this particular initiative. We'd like to think that it's going to be successful enough that we have to wind up putting more resources towards it. But as you know, we have a significant issue with unsheltered population, not only in the downtown, but throughout the city. And we believe that the key is connecting those unsheltered individuals with the potential services that they may be able to avail themselves of. So if the city, if this is successful, the city and the county would consider the potential for expansion, but only after meeting qualified criteria that we'll set as we begin to develop the program. I'll pause there and ask if there are questions, and I know Councilman Waddell has questions already, so I'm prepared.
Mr. Waddell?
Do we know how many police officers we're dedicating to this service?
We're saying up to 4. The reason we say up to 4, and I want to give just a little commentary, the way that the schedule is currently set for the county social workers is they would work 10-hour shifts, and so the police officers would be with them on those 10-hour shifts, and then they would be on call afterwards. There is a possibility that our police officers who serve, for example, in the downtown task force or in one other division, may be the on-call officers. So we may actually only need 3, but right now up to 4 officers that would be assigned to it.
And then, thank you. And a follow-up, I know both the city and the county fund significant programs for the, chronically homeless, mentally ill, folks suffering from severe drug addiction. If one of the county social workers addresses one of these folks and refers them to the myriad of services that we have, and the person declines them, what's going to be the protocol? I know we're probably still working through that, but just kind of trying to wrap my head around that.
The county social services director was in a meeting with us the other day, at which time she indicated that on average it takes 16 contacts with an individual before they decide that they're going to take advantage of the services. She also said, if I recall correctly, and please don't hold me to this, about a third of the folks that are unsheltered prefer to live that way. A third of them have some sort of abuse problem, and then a third of them just need to be connected with the services. We understand that we will be thwarted in our attempts. We understand we will not get everyone into the program. We understand that this is trying to manage the issue, not try to make it go away. So we are prepared for that kind of frustration, but we do believe that the appropriate measures here are to establish a relationship with these folks, know who they are, and be able to help them with their needs.
Get those 16 touches in.
Yes, sir.
And a follow-up to that is, if obviously the police officer, Wilmington police officer, is there for protection, one, of the social worker, but also to see if criminal activity is taking place, and if it is, we'll be taking action. Correct?
Yes, sir. We are there to enforce the law, and we will do that as necessary. Again, understanding that this is trying to equip officers with the skills necessary to deal with this population, which is completely different than the skills necessary to deal with the crowds downtown on the weekends. And so there may be, all enforcement is up to the discretion of the officer, but we do believe that they are there for both protection and enforcement.
I think we have some of the best in the country, and good on whoever's deciding to take this on. We appreciate it.
Yes, sir. I've got to tell you, I read the Watch Commander's report every morning, and I am continually amazed at the number of officers who de-escalate situations and do not wind up with confrontations on their hands. And I'm very proud of our department because of that.
Mr. Anderson.
Tony, I think, I don't remember the time. I remember it was a convention center. I believe it was a common meeting with the county, as I recall, and there was some discussion about the need for, there's obviously a need for, but I just at some point, and maybe right now this is what's front and center and it's on the back burner, but there was discussion about, and I don't know what the exact terminology would be, but a place to bathe, wash clothes, that kind of thing, especially for that population, the third you mentioned that, may not ever have any interest in living in a home. So, I don't really, if you have an answer, great, but if not, I'd just love to keep that somewhere on the back burner in our discussions with the county. Thank you.
Well, and I appreciate that, and having had a conversation with you about this morning, and actually having met with the county manager today, one of the things that we have discussed before is getting to know the population, getting to know who needs what services, and then when we have a deficit of those services, trying to figure out how to best supply those. You know, is it best to put it in the downtown district? Is it best to place it, you know, somewhere on the fringes? We've got to figure that out, and we've got to establish that relationship to determine how many of those folks we have, where the need is, and then try to serve that need.
You know, the newly homeless are the easiest to gain their confidence. They're just new to them.
Yes, sir.
And they want something. The hardcore homeless are the ones that I know of, and that's their lifestyle. But about half of them are excited about the idea of having a small house or the things that are on the drawing boards that are coming. They really, you know, you let somebody live in a nice, warm, comfortable home warm in the winter, and they will get over wanting to be out in the woods. But to dovetail on what Neil was just talking about, the Good Shepherd Center provides that service for these folks, a place to go during the day, to take a shower, wash clothes, what have you. And they do a fantastic job. One of the problems that some of them see is it's at 9th, 8th and Martin, and they're here. So, but we are providing that service, and Katrina Knight and her group do a smashing job. And anything we can do to increase that, we should.
Again, getting to know this population, trying to figure out what the need is, trying to determine where we can meet that need and where there are deficits is important to this effort.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Some of these people will probably never have been approached by that team, a police officer and a social worker, so maybe it'll have more oomph. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to point out that Christina Haley from WDI is here in the audience, and she has been instrumental in dealing with Block by Block, and Block by Block actually hired Jack, who is the social worker, and he's the ambassador or the outreach person for downtown. And in talking with him and with Christina, I do serve on the WDI board, and so it's fascinating the success that Jack has had in establishing, just what the city manager said, of establishing ongoing relationships with these people who many people try to ignore and pass by in society. And he is apparently quite skilled at being able to establish trust with a number of individuals. And I just want to sort of reiterate in my notes here, hopefully things are going to get better because of Good Shepherd. We just gave them some property to house some more people. It's going to take some time and raising some money, but that's an opportunity. And then, of course, the city has supported financially Eden Village, which is actually, I think, they have a waiting list of people, but that is a housing opportunity, and these opportunities all need wraparound services. And so it's all of a mix of putting everything together, but the first step is your proposal, and I'm very happy to see that what WDI has done with Block by Block and hiring Jack and having him on, he's been on there like a year now, I think. So tremendous success there, and I'm glad we're going to try to replicate that, and I hope learn from him and deal with him. He's a fine young man, and we're lucky to have him in our community.
Mr. Barnett?
Yeah. Tony, I like the project. I like the proposal, and I'm definitely in favor of it. I guess a couple questions I would ask is, do you know if this has been done anywhere else in the country?
I do not personally know of any place else, but I'm sure it has been tried elsewhere.
Right, because I'm sure. And then the other thing is, you know, we know we're dealing with mental illness, and that's why I think the combination of the social worker and the police officer works really well. And then you mentioned that we've got to get the right person. You got to have the right kind of people that love that kind of work. And so I'm really excited about it. The last thing I would just want to make sure that we not forget is that we have others who are outside of the downtown area. You know, a number of homeless people. And I don't want us to just, you know, I know we got to see how it works there, but I want to make sure that we're planning to extend it.
The agreement between the county manager and myself thus far has been for the entire city limits.
Okay.
We're gonna focus downtown first, but we're also gonna work on the outlying areas where there have been traditionally pockets of unsheltered individuals.
All right, cool. I want a motion if we're ready. Oh, you go.
All right.
You can go.
We have a motion?
I'll second.
We have a motion by Mayor Pro Tem Haynes, second by Councilman Barnett. Discussion. All in favor of that motion, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Brings us to item R3, which is a resolution authorizing the mayor to sign the public comment letter to the North Carolina Utilities Commission concerning Duke Energy's Carolinas carbon plan. At this time, I'd like to recognize the city manager, Mr. Caudle.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Sustainability Project Manager David Ingram will overview this item for us.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council. Tonight, for your consideration, is a resolution seeking City Council support of a comment letter to the North Carolina Utilities Commission on Duke Energy's carbon plan. This comment letter presents the opportunity for Wilmington to share our climate action goals, as well as communicate how the carbon plan can best support us achieving those goals, as well as it provided the opportunity for us to work with our Duke Energy colleagues. In fact, here in the audience tonight is Ms. Pam Hardy. Thanks, Pam, for accompanying tonight. We certainly had some discussion with Duke Energy as well and presented our carbon letter for them to take a look at as well. So we very much appreciate the opportunities to collaborate on a number of energy efficiency and other Duke Energy programs that support our climate action goals. The letter is based on the initial letter that was presented to City Council at their August 16th letter. This revised letter presents a direction that staff received in regard to some of those comments and concerns from that original letter. You know, and just happy to answer any questions about this revised letter or the carbon plan opportunity in general.
Mr. Barnett?
Yeah, I noticed that the letter was a continuation of what we had planned, well, the council had planned back in like 2016 and even further back, correct?
Previously, we've provided a comment letter on Duke's integrated resource plan, which was a similar process. This carbon plan is in response to House Bill 951 and the goals of achieving a 70% emissions reduction by 2030. So this step is a bit more detailed and directly addresses the carbon plan.
Thank you.
Sure.
Mr. Waddell?
First of all, Mr. Ingram, you always have the best blazers of anybody who comes up here, and we're going to have to talk about that at some point. I'm going to need to figure out where you're going. I learned a lot about this over the last week or so, and I've spent a considerable amount of time in the Carolinas Carbon Plan Executive Summary, and I'm going to reference some of that. I'm sure you're very familiar with it. I'm not sure maybe everybody up here or staff is, so forgive me if I'm a little long-winded, but it's my understanding that Carolinas Carbon Plan has 4 separate portfolios, all of which lead to carbon neutrality by 2050. Is that your understanding as well?
That's correct, 4 separate pathways.
And they're referred to as P1, P2, P3, P4, so it's Portfolio 1 through Portfolio 4. Our letter seems to endorse Portfolio 1 or P1 still because it specifically references the 70% reduction by 2030. Is that fair?
That's fair, correct.
Portfolios P2 through P4 achieve the same 70% reduction by 2032 and 2034, I think, respectively. but they also incorporate plans that rely on offshore wind and/or nuclear SMR generation technologies. In our draft letter, we state that increasing energy costs are a major contributor to economic insecurity. Many North Carolinians face energy burden and suffer disproportionately from the impacts of climate change. We go on from there, but that's the major point that I need to bring that in, because with that in mind, I want to refer to what's known as Figure 8, and I think that's in the executive summary, it's Figure 8, but it's commonly referred to as Figure 312 within the North Carolina Utilities Commission. Are you familiar with that chart at all?
I'm sure I've probably seen it. I don't have it here in front of me. this
Here from the executive summary of the Carolinas Carbon Plan, it's the intermediate term residential bill impact by portfolio. And so basically what that does is it breaks down P1 through P4, and it shows the average monthly residential bill impact for a household unit, all right? So the end user. The average monthly residential bill for individual households in Portfolio 1, which we're being asked to recommend and support, would increase individual household bills $35 a month by 2030 and $45 a month by 2035. Additionally, it has a 4% compounded annual growth rate for the average monthly bill. P4, just to pick another one out of the P2 through 4, however, shows roughly a $15 increase, so 300% delta on the increases there. So my question is, which is it? Do we understand the increasing energy costs that are a major contributor to economic insecurity, as the letter states, or are we choosing P1, which shows a 300% higher average monthly bill for the customers in 2030? And I'm going to continue just a little bit. It seems to me, in delving into a lot of this, that reliability nor cost are really being considered properly here. And while certainly clean energy is absolutely something that we need to be striving for, I think all P1 through P4 get to the same goal. There's got to be a balancing act that's going to consider the reliability of our grid, which is paramount, right? That brings the energy to our schools, our hospitals, the folks, and then also the homes of the people that we represent, and also the cost that's determined there too, and the cost increase, which by the Carolinas Carbon Plan executive summary, Figure 8, is exorbitant, the one that we're signing on to. So I know we need to do something within this. I don't think that City Council has been properly briefed on all the potentials. I would have never known there was a P2 through P4 had I not spent way too many hours away from my wife this week.
There's a lot of detail in there.
You're welcome to rebut it, but that's going to be something that I'm going to try and do here, just to continue this as we, and I'll send you guys copies of everything that I'm talking about here. But if we don't continue it, I'll ask that we strike from the letter increasing, how we understand that increasing energy costs are a major contributor to economic insecurity, because we can't say both.
Yeah, well, I don't think I'll try to rebut that, because since I don't have all the information right here in front of me, and we're here to provide information to council to support these efforts, so happy to provide additional information if council would like to some time to consider additional info.
Hold on. Mr. Anderson?
What's the name of the committee, your committee that's?
Clean Energy Advisory.
Were they presented all four options?
They were, yeah.
And they chose this one?
They were provided information in regard to the carbon plan as well as the executive summary. So.
But they're aware that there's 4 ways to get there, and some might be in the first landmark date might be 2 or 3 dates apart, but we're getting to the same thing in 2050, and they endorsed the one that was most expensive.
No, I don't think that's the direction that our advisory committee was going. We're providing information in regard to comments that we would like the Utility Commission to look in further, which is, not only achieving that Pathway 1 goal of achieving the early goal of 70% reduction by 2030, going, beyond into 2050 was.
Well, that was, the others are like 2032, 2034. I mean, so were they or were they not presented the 4 options, I guess is the question.
They were aware of the 4 pathways within the Duke Carbon Plan, yes.
And they didn't choose any, is what you're saying? They just gave comments?
Correct, yeah, as far as through the committee, correct.
But we're endorsing one, or what's the letter doing?
One. One is the one that we're endorsing. And,
okay. So they chose the most expensive one.
I'm not sure I quite think that was the way that the committee was trying to.
What was it? They were aware that was the outcome of that.
I think there's alternative plans that are also being presented to the Utilities Commission, which shows some other modeling, which has some other pricing and opportunities. So
it just kind of goes back to my point. We ought to state what our goals are and ask Duke Power to help us get there. We're not in the power business. We're not in the, and it just feels like it was like a goodwill thing as it started out, and this city and that city signed on it too. Wilmington ought to sign on it too. But I mean, if you dig into these things, they always seem we get these type things, they just seem real nebulous, and Luke's obviously done his homework, but you can just feel it. And I don't, it bothers me we try to become experts on something we're not. So, thanks.
Thank you.
I just, if we have 4 or 5 options to take a look at, and to Mr. Waddell's comments, I think we owe it to the council because we're digging into a little bit more. And I don't believe that we're carrying the load here for Duke Energy. Our job is to look at the policies as to what we think is best for the community. Although one of those policies or one of those statements we made in our policies is the concern that we have for people in paying their utility bills. And if the plan that we are endorsing significantly increases those costs, I think we as a council ought to have an opportunity to evaluate the other 3 options that have been laid out on the table, and maybe have a little bit more in-depth discussion about it, maybe an agenda briefing. I know this will, if we do that and to continue it, we will lose the deadline, we will miss the deadline, but we can still make our comments known. Yes, sir, Mr. Waddell.
The Utilities Commission's meeting at the end of December, is that correct?
The evidentiary.
Maybe, right? The evidentiary hearing is maybe the end of December.
Well, December is when they have to come out with towards the end of December is when they have to decide on the carbon plan and which routes and directions that it needs to go.
Right.
So the evidentiary hearings are actually going on now, which.
Are we sure that wasn't extended? That timeline wasn't extended? I may be incorrect on that, but.
I don't know if it was extended.
Okay, yeah, I believe it's later in the year, and which gives us some time to look at this.
Mr. Moe?
Mr. Mayor and members of council, we profusely apologize. We can certainly discover the complexity of this. Our intention was to sign on and endorse a general policy supporting a cleaner environment, and clearly as we dig into this, we're discovering that there are some unknowns. We regret that. If you're willing to allow staff to work with the mayor's office to devise a letter that in general has the spirit of what our intentions were, and we can send that to members of council, then send it off, we'll be happy to do that. But at this time, we certainly feel that there's more that needs to be dug in, but our intention was to have a general statement that supports the overall position of trying to protect the environment through taking efforts that are reasonable and judicious to reduce the negative impacts of carbon and greenhouse gas emissions.
Very good. All right. Do we need to take a specific action on that? Mr. Joy, continue it.
Mr. Mayor, the options you have are to approve as is, or to continue it, or the council could delegate to you to amend a letter under your penmanship. Those were the options.
Why don't we go ahead and amend the letter and then send it to each individual council members for them to take a look at, see if they're okay with it.
Sure, and that will meet the timetable. That'll meet the timetable.
Yeah.
Okay.
What you could do is that council could authorize you to amend the letter in the vein of what you've heard tonight. You can send it to council before you would send it to the Utilities Commission. If anyone objects, then we would just put it on for council to debate it.
That's fine. All right?
Yep.
Okay. All right. All right. Do we need to do something, John?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, what you have before you is a motion. What's written in your agenda is a resolution for your approval. If you don't want to do that, then I would recommend that a motion be made to grant you as mayor the authority to amend this letter and then to forward it to council, and hearing no objection to send it on to the Utilities Commission.
Very good. We have a motion to adopt as amended, and Councilmember Anderson has made that motion. We have a second to that by Councilmember Barnett.
Council will receive a copy of this before it's approved and goes out, right?
Absolutely. All in favor of that motion, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All right. All right, that brings us to our next item, and I'll note that the resolution has been amended to include the interim salary. Item R4 is a resolution appointing Deputy City Attorney Meredith T. Everhart as interim city attorney. At this time, I'd like to recognize Mr. Al Ragland, our Human Resources Director. Mr. Ragland.
Mr. Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, Council, happy to be with you this evening. You just kind of talked about the resolution for your consideration to appoint Meredith Everhart as the interim city attorney. And I'm here to answer any. I'm going to take over as attorney. She's going to take over.
Is there something the council would like to tell me?
I'm in favor.
As the interim city attorney.
Okay, thank you.
And I'm here to answer any questions that you might have.
Okay. All right, we have a motion to approve by Mayor Pro Tem Hand, second by Councilmember Barnett. Discussion. All in favor of that motion, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item passes unanimously. That brings us to our reports. Item RP1, Council's Appointments Committee for Boards and Commissions. At this time, I'd like to recognize Councilmember Charlie Reinbark, who is the chairman of that committee. Mr. Reinbark.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The Appointments Committee made up of myself, Councilmember Neil Anderson, and Councilmember Luke Waddell. We met on September the 6th this year and have the following appointments, renewals, and what have you to report to council. The Cape Fear Public Utility Authority, we are reappointing Deans Hackney Jr. with a term to expire June 30, 2025. Moving on to the Historic Preservation Commission, we're appointing Allison Watts to the HD-R position with a term to expire July 1, 2026. Move Kathleen Egan from at-large position to Historic District residential position with a term to expire 6/21/2023. Appoint Ross Tomaselli to at-large position with a term to expire 7/1/2026. The Loan Review Board, reappointing Thomas Burns as a rehab specialist representative with a term to expire August the 4th, 2024, and reappoint Matthew Hilliard, our commercial lending representative, with a term to expire September 15, 2024. Municipal Services District Advisory Committee, appoint McKay Siegel with a term to expire 7/1/2024. Reappoint John Sneed with a term to expire 7/1/2025. Reappoint David Gross, term to expire 7/1/2025. Appoint Ann Coffey as a MSD. I'm sorry, I have failed to label which pigeonhole they're in. John Sneed is with hospitality. McKay Siegel is property owner. David Gross is WDI. Terry Espy is DBA, Downtown Business Association, with a term to expire July 1, 2025. And Ann Coffey is an MSD resident with a term to expire 7/1/2025. Reappoint Elizabeth Wright at large. Her term expires 7/1/2025. The New Hanover County City of Wilmington Community Relations Advisory Committee, we appoint Sabrina Moore at large with a term to expire September 20, 2025, and appoint Fred Myers at large with the expiration term expires 9/20/24. Downtown Parking Advisory Committee, reappoint Peter Maloff with the residents of Old Wilmington with a term to expire 8/17/25, and reappoint Justin Smith, term expires 9/21/25. Appoint Rebecca Somerset from, that's the New Hanover County recommendation. And Parks and Recreation Advisory Board, appoint Ron Woodruff to fill a vacancy with a term to expire 11/7/24. The Wilmington Planning Commission, we appointed we're recommending Danny Adams with a term to expire September 21, 2025, and appoint Ace Kofer with a term to expire 9/21/23. Sister City Commission, and this is almost the end, folks, appoint Nedka Deneva at large with a term to expire August 16, 25. Reappoint Travis Matthews, New Hanover County Schools, with a term to expire 9/1/25. And lastly, remove Melissa Atkinson from the Wilmington Tree Commission and appoint Ed West Jr., and his term will expire June 18, 2025. I offer these up for the council's consideration.
Okay, we have a motion to approve by Councilmember Anderson, second by Councilmember Waddell. Discussion. All in favor of that motion, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Item passes unanimously. Okay, this concludes the regular agenda. Are there any items to be brought forward by our city attorney?
Mr. Mayor, all I want to say is on the night in which you appoint the interim replacement of me, it has been an honor, and the only reason that I am not continuing to be here is because I need to take care of my father. It's a pleasure. Thank you.
Honor, John, thank you. Mr. Manager?
Mr. Mayor, in the words of the immortal Maurice White, the lead singer of Earth, Wind, and Fire, tomorrow is the 21st night of September. Happy autumnal equinox.
Okay, thank you. Madam Clerk? Mr. Waddell?
No comment.
Mr. Barnett?
Just always remind us to take care of our, look after your strongest friend. You know, the person that you think's got it all together, that may be the guy that you read about the next day that doesn't have it all together. So if somebody comes to your mind, your strongest friend, just give them a call, check them out, and that's it. Thank you.
Madam Pro Tem? Mr. Umbar?
Yes, sir. This past week, one of our good friends of this council in the city, Skip Watkins, his wife Valerie passed away after a long, courageous battle with colon cancer. And just want to tell everybody to keep them in their prayers. They'd been married a long time and were just totally in love. And it's a sad day. So anyway, we love you, Skip.
Ms. Anderson? Spears?
In the words of Councilman Anderson, racism is not going anywhere. Thank you.
With that, thank you for taking an interest in your government. We stand adjourned.